All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the meeting. Call this meeting to order and the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We do have a quorum. Director Rice had an appointment this morning and is running a little bit late. She should arrive shortly. We'll go ahead and move on. Report from closed session. Mr. Carmel.
President Pearson, the board met in closed session and discussed labor negotiations. Nothing to report.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Agenda review. Any additions or deletions? Anyone? No, we're good. Okay, very good. Onward we go to public safety. The Sheriff's Department report is first. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Commander Nelson.
Welcome. Is your light on?
I think it is now. Okay. Good afternoon. Justin Nelson, Commander at the Sheriff's Co-Station. I have the August report for Cambria. We had 354 calls for service and 42 reports. Last year at this time, we had 318 calls for service and 28 reports. We responded to 2 calls for service regarding assault and or battery. Of note, we responded to a call in Cambria regarding a male assaulting another male with a baseball bat. The victim had minor injuries and declined medical aid. Deputies arrived, conducted an investigation, and ultimately arrested one male suspect for assault with a deadly weapon. We had 23 calls for service regarding disturbances, with 3 reports. Of note, we responded to a restraining order violation at a residence in Cambria. One subject was arrested for violation of a court order on that case. We had 3 burglary calls for service with 2 reports. We were dispatched to a burglary of an unoccupied vacation home in Cambria. A window was broken in the home to gain entry, and we found narcotic paraphernalia inside. It was left by the suspects. This case is still currently being investigated by the Sheriff's Office. It's an active investigation. We had 3 calls for service regarding thefts. Of note, we responded to a call regarding a credit card that was stolen from a purse that was inside a vehicle. It was determined that the owner accidentally left one of the windows to the vehicle down. The victim was unaware of the theft until the credit card company contacted them and told them about the fraudulent charges. In this case, we were able to identify a suspect, and charges are being filed with the district attorney's office. We have a lot of theft cases from vehicles throughout the county. Just a good reminder for the public. Keep all valuables if you can, not in your car. If you have to, try and put it in a trunk or under the seat where it's not visible. We had 2 calls for service regarding vandalisms, nothing of note. No mail theft calls for service for August. We had 7 calls for service regarding phone scams. A popular scam that's been going on for a while is the grandchild scam, where they target grandparents. The caller states that they're a grandchild and that there's been an accident and they're either in jail, foreign country, or the hospital, and they need money. And then money is sent to them. They also usually state to not tell their mother or father. We had 18 calls for service regarding suspicious circumstances with 3 reports. Of note, we got a call near the post office regarding a male making strange comments, and he was in possession of a steel pipe. Deputies arrived and discovered he was in possession of stolen property. He was arrested for theft and also resisting arrest. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the sheriff? No? All right, very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move along now to the fire department report. Chief Hollingsworth. Welcome,
Good afternoon,
sir.
everyone. It's good to see you all today. For the month of August, we had a total of 76 emergency responses here in the community. 49 of those were emergency medical aids. That still rates in the 65 to 70% in regards to EMS or emergency medical focus and response. You keep reporting in regards to percentages in regards to local versus non-local presentation in regards to patients that we see. And we're at about 70, almost just under 80% in regards to local versus non-local. We are getting a little bit of an uptick in regards to both mutual aid and auto aid calls throughout the county as we get later in the year, as it gets a little bit drier. This is where we have more calls for service, not only in the community, but outside. So you see a little bit of a rise in regards to water tender responses into the other areas of the community and other areas of the county. And we're very happy and proud to be able to provide that service to the other communities as needed. We're tying up the very last ends of the fire hazard fuel reduction program. There's only a handful of parcels left. Typically, our goal is to have that done much earlier in the year, but again, due to the amount of rain that we received this year and the increased growth and the lateness in being able to get heavy equipment on some of the parcels, there was a delay. So please be patient. If you have concerns about stuff that you believe hasn't been done, feel free to reach out to me at the fire station. We're getting a handful of calls about that, and we're researching every one of those and happy to look into it to make sure that we're not missing anything. We are, in association with that, working on a local chipping event. That's going to be October 17th through 19th. Marketing and advertising for that's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks. So I encourage you, for anybody's local people here in the community, if you have trees and bushes and stuff that need to get limbed up, it's a very successful program. It's paid for through the Fire Safe Council in the county, and we're happy to be able to provide that as necessary. In association to what Commander Nelson's dealing with, we occasionally get phone calls from the community asking about whether or not we solicit for the firefighters' retirement fund. I would like to very clearly state that no, we do not. Nobody in the fire service does that. And if you get those phone calls, that is a fraudulent scam. So there's been a couple of calls to the fire station in the last few weeks indicating that, wondering why we were doing that, and it's just an educational piece. But if you do get those phone calls, please make an effort to report that immediately to the Sheriff's Department. The last thing I would like to talk about today is just the availability of a new program that's in the county, and it's called Pulse Point. It is a smart app that is available for your phone for both iOS or iPhone devices, but then also for Android devices. It is a program that lets you to monitor any of the dispatched calls within the community that are under the dispatch authority of the agency you have. So for instance, we contract all of our dispatch services through CAL FIRE, as do most of the outlying communities in this county. If you get this app, it's a free subscription. You can actually listen to and get notifications for everything you identify there, whether it is a medical aid, a fire, a vehicle fire, a wildland fire, whatever it is, any kind of a rescue. It'll come up and alert you as to where that is. You could actually hit a button and listen to all of the jargon back and forth, if you will, through the incident command system, through the dispatch. You can hear what's going on. It's really important so you can actually know what's going on in the community, and it's free, and that was in conjunction with Chief Jalbert with County Fire. He's been making a very concerted effort to coordinate with all the agencies, so we're happy to be able to provide that. What's additionally helpful with that program is that there is a CPR component, and this is what it was initially built on, is that if you have this enabled on your phone and a call for a CPR comes in, because we know immediate first responder CPR aggressively is what saves lives, that'll actually alert you if you have a certain proximity to that incident. So for instance, if you were down here one Friday afternoon at a farmer's market, and there's somebody unfortunately had a heart attack in this building, and they went in and called 911, anybody that had that app on their phone that was CPR trained, that's registered that way, it would alert you, and you could theoretically be on scene much faster than even the first responders. And that's what's going to save lives, and that's already saved lives in this county. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for everybody to become a little bit more involved and aware of what's going on. If you have any questions about it, I encourage you to go ahead and ask me, and we can get you the information about it. But it is available for everybody to download and register with now. I'm over to you for any questions.
All right, thank you. I have a slip here to make a comment, public comment on this. Chief, you might want to stick around. Karen Dean, please.
Hi, Karen Dean. I just wanted to express my appreciation to our Cambria Fire Department. I was one of their public assist calls. It was not an emergency, but my ears thought it was. About 2 hours after my husband left to go out of town for several days, our smoke detector went off, and of course it was the one 10 feet up high on the wall that I could not reach, even if I wasn't too old to climb a ladder and had a ladder. And the fire department sent 3 people out and with a big ladder, and they came up and fixed it for me. And so I wanted to express my appreciation for that. I also want to say a thank you to Michael at the office, because I called him to get the non-emergency number for the fire department, and he said if they don't come to fix my battery, he will come after work and do it for me. So I wanted to say thank you to him too. Anyway, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Chief. I don't see, Vice President Farmer.
Yeah, Chief, thank you. Thank you for letting us know about this Pulse Point program and this free app that's available. I'm wondering if perhaps we could put a little note of that in the water bill so that everybody in the community would know about it, realize that it's available. Is that possible?
We'd be happy to do so. I can coordinate that with admin staff, assuming that availability is there. We also have a synopsis of that that's being developed, so it can go up on our website and be available there as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for the chief? No? Yes.
As that's developed, we could probably put that on the CCSD website also.
Yeah, that's what
The information that, right.
you said he was going to do.
Oh, on his website. Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
I understand now.
All right. All right, now we move along to acknowledgement, General Manager Weigold.
Good afternoon, Board. I'd like to call Mr. Helmut Kohl to the podium. Helmut, how are you? Good to see you. So I'd like to make a presentation. Helmut, in preparation for our town hall, I actually happened to meet him in a coffee shop on a weekend in Morro Bay, along with his wife. And as we got to talking, he talked about all the work that he does with aerial photography using a drone, among other objects. And he instantaneously brought up on his phone, I think it was a phone or maybe your laptop there, aerial photos of our SWF facility. Just, about 2 weeks prior to our town hall. So I asked if he would be willing to share some of the photos, and not only did he do that, but he went out to the facility to take additional photos because we needed a wider view of the property. And so, and he did this all on his own time, free of charge to the district, and I wanted to present him with a token of our appreciation, a little plaque and letter.
Excellent, thank you, thank you.
The second recognition is for our fire department, who had a tremendous operation over in San Simeon area recently. And do we want to play the video first, or?
Go ahead and do it at the same time.
All right, because there's no real sound for that, right? Okay, I'll turn it over to the chief.
If you guys want to go ahead and put the video up on the screen, we can give them a synopsis of what occurred. So this is a pleasure to be able to bring this forward to you. If you want to kind of watch what's going on as I give you a real quick review of what occurred.
You see where the
We
line
get
is
called out
attached to
frequently
anything,
to perform
Ryan?
rescues for people that are injured or stuck or any other variants of problems. We don't always get called out to help animals, but it does happen, and we're happy to recognize the people involved. So Mike and Emily, can you go ahead and come forward? Captain Torlano and Engineer Mike Berkey were on duty on September 1st when they got a phone call from dispatch that there was a potential animal rescue up in the San Simeon area, and they were responded along with CAL FIRE. And when they got there, there had been a report from the Marine Mammal Center who had been on scene for a little over an hour, for actually a few hours, monitoring this, and there was a seal that was stuck in the kelp bed that had a large hook through its side, tethered to line that had been wrapped around the poles, and so it was actually suffering quite a bit there underneath the pier. And so Captain Torlano was able to assess the situation and be able to launch one of our firefighter, Mort, on a rescue paddleboard and get out there. It was too close to maneuver the rescue boat, and they were able to get out right next to the seal. And obviously there's an inherent danger involved with this because you never know how the animal's going to react. But they were able to get the animal at least calm to the point where it realized it needed some assistance. And as you'll see here in a moment, as you see it kind of swimming around, that it's able to trust the firefighter enough that it actually jumps up on the board and is going to sit there with him, and he's able to reach out and cut the animal free. Now, obviously, we're not veterinarians. We're not able to remove the hook, but he's able to untether him so he can actually swim out and probably be okay after that. But it's really wonderful to be able to recognize them for the amount of effort and compassion that they show, because it goes far beyond just what we're able to do for the people in the community. And this is an example of how automatic aid works. This is not our immediate response area, but we do respond up there with our water rescue personnel, and that's why I want to thank you again for supporting the use of our training budget for those things. We look at it as critical to bring our personnel up to the highest level of training possible, and if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't authorized those funds, if we hadn't been able to hold that class locally, we wouldn't have been able to put people in the water to do this, because there's technical certifications that you need to have. So I would just like to thank all three of them, Engineer Mike Berkey, Captain Torlano, and Firefighter Mort, for their commitment to this, and the fact that they were able to provide something so meaningful to an animal that'll be very thankful, I'm sure. Thank you.
Wonderful. Vice President Farmer.
I just want to make a brief comment about the seal and the essential intuitive connection that mankind has with the other species that exist on this planet, and how that seal was able to recognize that here was a human being here to do good, and I'm going to assist him in the process. I thought that was awesome.
All right, thank you. Well done by the fire department again. We'll move on to public comment. First up will be Karen Dean, followed by Dr. Bettenhausen.
Hi. This Saturday, September 21st, is the 35th Annual Coastal Cleanup Day. Green Space will be leading a group of volunteers to do the section of the beach by Santa Rosa Creek off of Moonstone Beach Drive from 9 o'clock until noon. We welcome any volunteers that would like to join us to meet us there at 8:30 a.m. We will start the cleanup at 9, and Green Space will provide refreshments, glove, trash bags, and buckets. But we also encourage any volunteers who'd like to come to bring extra trash bags if they have them. Anyway, we hope other people come out and join us for this worthwhile activity to help clean up our beaches. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bettenhausen, followed by Ms. Dickinson.
Video of the group that rescued the humpback whale that
attached also by fishing netting, and after they released the whale, this has happened twice lately, 2 different whales. After they released the whale swam away, stopped, and breached. Now there, Mr. Director Farmer, is an example. I want to thank the board, that's all of you sitting there, for the detailed and long discussion you had a week ago on the intent to serve letter. All the directors, all of you came informed, and you grew even more so with the material was brought by Director Rice. And I would hope that that will get posted then for the public also to look at those documents. You listened to public comment because you referred to it as you discussed, I know that, and you decided then by a majority vote. It was not unanimous, but it was a majority vote. This was a good example of realizing and facing the conflict now in Cambria between 2 needs. One is affordable housing for low-income employees and local businesses, and the other is protection of the 2 creeks that are supplying the district with drinking water. Those are 2 needs, no doubt about it. But the protection of the water supply must be done before the housing base is expanded in this town, whether for working class or landowners ready for second homes or anyone else. Why? Because protecting the water supply is a service that provides essential foundations for existing occupied homes and the people therein. And it's prerequisite to new homes. The 2 needs must be met, but there is no doubt in my mind about which is essential to meet before you can even address the second one now. Protecting the water supply is a responsibility within an environmentally sensitive habitat area, an ESHA area. But I believe that really ESHA describes all of Cambria, not simply certain areas of San Simeon Creek or Santa Rosa Creek, but the entire place we live in, including the wonderful beach this morning with the snowy plover again. It's essentially an area needing protection. I know this was all mentioned by the fire chief, but another aspect of this right now is the misunderstanding, serious one, as to what brush clearing regulations mean for the forested area of this town. The scraping of the area, and I mean scraping of the entire area along Highway 1 on this side of Burton and down on the inside side is, when I saw it first 10 days ago, I was dumbfounded. I cannot believe that this town did that to the forest, even though the fire is a hazard. But that's not the way you protect yourself long-term from fire hazard. That's cooperating with fire hazard. So I compliment you again on last week's discussion, and I look forward to knowing how to use equipment. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Dickinson.
I'm next, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm not at 3 minutes, though. You've got me down already, way down, 10 seconds. I'm watching. Tina Dickinson, Cambria. First of all, I would like to address comments made by Director Rice to comments I made at the last board meeting I attended. In the fall of 2013, in the year of the worst drought we had in recorded California history, I believe, I made it my mission to look into a possible water supply alternative for water, a reservoir off-stream storage, it turned out, the site of which is a dry wall canyon on Clyde Warren's property on Santa Simeon Creek Road. I held a workshop on January 20th, 2014, providing expert data and with a panel of experts and the property owner to provide information and answer questions. Attendees numbered 110, which is a good size for Cambria, 98% of whom agreed with this concept. Winter pumping for storage made sense in a town that needs water for firefighting. By the way, the capacity was 600 to 700 acre feet. I felt that if I had a solution to Cambria's #1 problem, water, that I could use that as my platform to run in the 2014 election. Little did I know that 10 days later, the district would be voting to have the GM cut a check for $500,000 toward a project which would become the EWS. And it was only then, January 30th, 2014, that the then GM declared a stage 3 drought emergency. None had been declared prior during the worst drought in California recorded history. The governor declared the state in a drought emergency January 17, 2014. 2 weeks later, our then GM did that. Any hopes of a reservoir off-stream storage project were dashed, and that is why I did not run Director Rice, or haven't considered it since, as the cards were stacked against me and those who agreed with me. And by the way, the Army Corps of Engineers did not look at the Warren property site. They looked at, or glanced at, 3 canyons east of Mr. Warren's property, 1 or 2 of which are blue line streams, which would have been problematic with ESHA. The Warren property is not a blue line stream. So please understand that that was my intent, okay? And I do have one quick one, if I may, if that's okay. Second one, I would like people to know that I and others are protesting the trash increase of 25.31%. Forms are available on social media, and I am walking the town and my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. After I got my water bill, after being in LA for 8 days and saw the increase, believe me, we don't need this. So folks, get a form and oppose this increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Heinrichs, followed by Mr. Key.
Thank you. I would like to thank the board, along with Ms. Bettenhausen, for such a thoughtful discussion of the extension of the intent to serve letter, and for that conclusion of deciding finally to bring that to a conclusion. Thanks especially to Director Rice for helping District Council by providing historical documentation for this matter. Cambria does not exist in a bubble. Other agencies have regulations that supersede local ordinances. Cambria needs to act within the bounds of those other agencies. Otherwise, we face continuing expenses and struggles that will nevertheless be frustrated. Please be mindful of the Coastal Commission, NOAA, National Marine Fisheries, all those other U.S. Fish and Wildlife, state Fish and Wildlife, that do influence and have control over our resources, and work with them rather than bringing them projects that continually are against both good sense and their regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Key, followed by Mr. Lyons.
Hi, Ted Key, Cambria. Good afternoon, board. I would just like to take a moment to commend the R&I committee and commend the finance committee, standing committees, for the work that they're doing. They are doing excellent work, I think. And while I know that that this can be a situation that kind of slows the train down a little bit, I know that they're spending a fair amount of time bringing John up to speed on lots of things. And I really think that their work is so important because while it may slow the train down a little bit, we're getting it right. Getting it right is better than getting it fast. And I think it's very important for our community right now. And so anyway, I wanted to commend the work that they're doing. I also would like to, as a member of the Marine Mammal Rescue Group, thank the fire department. We are not allowed to do water rescues. Typically, it's a dangerous thing to do, and we are not allowed to do that. I can tell you that the animals are amazingly resilient. I wouldn't worry too much about the fish hook left in the seal, because it will surely eventually dissolve and go away. I can tell you that these animals are quite intelligent, and they are incredibly resilient. I rescued an animal last week that had a horrific shark bite and drove it up to the hospital up north, and the animal is still hanging in there. So it is a miracle to me sometimes how these animals can take just a horrific beating and still keep ticking. So anyway, thanks to all involved.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons, followed by Ms. Richards.
Thank you. Mike Lyons, Cambria. I don't pretend to know the mindset of any animal on this planet, the seals or the whales, but I think I do know, and I think I have a pretty good sense of the community when it comes to the homeless and supporting affordable housing. It cannot escape our attention that hundreds of people were here for that meeting on the homeless, which is closely related to affordable housing, and the sense that the community is very much in favor of providing for affordable housing on a fairly urgent basis. I was very disappointed to hear that the Coastal Commission has moved this to a de novo hearing. I think that would add at least a year to the process of installing these much needed, desperately needed homes. And I would urge the board and the staff to prepare as much as possible with given as much audience as you might or might not have at the Coastal Commission during this hearing to argue the case for this particular people's self-help project. I urge you with the utmost sincerity to press the case on behalf of the entire community. I discount the idea that several people in our community feel that the urgency is there to find every fact and notice every water meter. The priority should be on affordable housing. There's something else that I've been wanting to say for a year, and now that this particular agenda seems to be fairly uncontentious, I hope, I would like to say that during the last year, I've noticed a tremendous effort on the part of all the board and the staff, and I want it to be known that I appreciate every extra minute you take, for every extra standing committee meeting you attend, every commission meeting you attend, every hour you spend studying for these meetings, every minute somebody takes noticing them, and all of the answers that you give to the public. It is much appreciated by me, and I'm sure many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. The last one.
Leslie Richards, 35-year resident Cambria. Director Rice, thank you so much for doing the history lesson for 2014. We were here, we were involved on the intent to serve, fantastic action last meeting. I just received my water bill and almost passed out from the new rate increase. To date, since 2014, I have had a 300% increase in my bill with the same usage as of the EWS changeover. So this is, my time is showing 23 seconds here, sir.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. The other thing I want to bring up, just a little house cleaning is, we are so happy that we have these committees. The citizens committees are doing a phenomenal amount of work, and we thank you so much for allowing us the resource to have these committees. I can't attend, I still work, I still have other issues, and it's difficult for me to attend all the meetings, so the audio recordings are critical mass for us to have information. And I'd like to give you an example of the last audio recording from the infrastructure committee. The individual that was recording was doing this so much that you have a hard time hearing the statements. So just a heads up, whoever the secretary is for all the committees, when Tom Gray gets a little nervous, he has a tendency to do a habit of clicking his pen, and you couldn't hear the Schwartzes, you couldn't hear people talking, because and depending on how nervous he was about the statements that were being made by the individuals, it would go faster and faster. So I had a hard time hearing the tape last night. So please, if we could just put the audio recording in a section where we don't hear the chit chat and dialogue, paper moving, it's really important. That's an important component, and I thank you so much for doing it. Thank you for being opening up the doors to light and letting us have a clear understanding of what's going on with the district. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to, Director Rice.
I just wanted to really quickly, I am, the reason I was only kind of paying attention during the public comment, I was getting the agenda packet and the minutes from the May 22nd, 2014 meeting, which is where I got the information that I brought up last week. I'm in the process of sending that in an email because it should already be on the site. It's the agenda packet and the minutes. The minutes are from the next meeting that the board had, so they would have been approved, and it's for May 22nd, 2014. That's what the information that I got. I did bring some extras. I'm sorry they didn't get out to the public, but I'm going to send them right now. It should already be on the website unless they already took down 2014, but I'm sending it again right now. So, yeah, it should be in the archive, so you should have access to it already, but this is just an extra little. So it's out there. I'm not trying to.
You're welcome. All right, number 5, board member, committee, and liaison reports. President's report is first. I'd like to start by saying that I regretted having to gavel one of our speakers, Mr. Betcher, last week. It's not something that I like to do, but there are rules that we have to abide by in this meeting, and the reason is that we are a deliberative body, and this is the only chance due to the Brown Act that we get to speak together and do our work. We cannot engage in conversations with people at the podium. That's not what it's there for. You can make comments and we can listen to them. If we have questions for you, yes, we'll ask you to answer questions, but it is not to be a conversation, okay? That's plain and simple. Number 2, the other rule that I want to go over is that this is public comment, or any time that we give you the opportunity to comment is not the time to attack the board or any individual member of the board. That's inappropriate and it's unfair. We cannot respond to those attacks or any other kind of missive like that. So please make your commentary constructive at all times, and we can have a very good meeting that way. All right? Thank you. A couple other things. One, there was a couple of comments in public comment about the Coastal Commission and meeting with them and that kind of thing. I did attend a meeting at the behest of Supervisor Gibson with the Coastal Commission. They were meeting with the county to go over all the different issues that they had with all of the different entities within San Luis Obispo County. And they spoke to us briefly about People's Self-Help Project. It was very cordial. One of the things that we both agreed on was that we would be meeting with them before the de novo hearing and cooperating with them and getting them all the information that they needed to make a good decision at that de novo hearing. This board, I think, is very much, and I know the general manager and his staff are very much in tune with cooperating with the Coastal Commission, getting them the information that they need and want in order for them to make a good decision. And that's all we're trying to do. So let you know that we did have that meeting. It was a good meeting, and it was on great terms and everything. And we'll be meeting with them in the future to make sure that they have the information and the stuff that they need once again for the hearing and going forward. Last thing I've got is it's come to my attention that some of the committees have been kind of strained from the bylaws and the direction from the board. I think we have to remember that these standing committees are subcommittees of this board, and as such are set up to help us do our work. They're not set up to do the community's work, so to speak. If you want a community advocacy group, that's great. Glad to have that and have that person meet with us and do things. But the overall goals and objectives of each one of those committees really should be assigned by the board, in my opinion. And we'll get to the other board members as we go through the committee reports. But the important thing is that we need to have them help us do our work. And as Mr. Key said, we want to do it thoroughly, not fast. If this board was to try to meet on all of those things, we would do them probably faster and less informed than what the Finance Committee, the R&I Committee, and the Policy Committee can do. But what they're working on really should be at the direction of this board, because they are our standing committees, and we set them up in order to do that work for us. Okay, so onward to the committee reports. I do have some requests to speak here, and I'm going to have you speak first so that hopefully the chairperson will be able to answer your question or elucidate whatever your comments were as going forward. Now, the Finance Committee report is first, and Ms. Bittenhausen would like to speak on that particular issue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly agree on your interpretation of the standing committees and have never construed them as a place where I can bring my issues and ask the board to deal with anything. They are working at your request, and they are working, however, with the stated purpose also of having a place to engage the public more readily. And so I hope that that continues.
Yes.
I really want simply to respond quickly to Director Stidell's statement about that she read a couple of meetings ago in response to my June comment, because I think there's a little misinformation on my part, perhaps. When I look at the budget, and I do regularly, I always transform numbers into specific practices, programs, and operations. It's somewhat like in the second grade now when we do math. Second graders are confronted. If Joe has 16 crayons and he gives 5 to Andrew, how many crayons does Joe have left? And it's much easier for the second graders and me to understand the math problem. I know that people who are well trained in accounting, as I am not, have perspectives by virtue of that training, which tend to look at numbers as significant in and of themselves without any specific content. The number is a manipulable symbol in many, many, many ways in accounting. And getting a balanced budget, which has certainly been before this board lately and will continue to be so, I hope not as bad as Lompoc, but it's an issue here in Cambria too. The balanced budget issue is an important one, but when I look at the balanced budget issue, I look at stories within it. And I look at stories that people thought they were hearing and discovered that now that the numbers are there, oops, I guess the story got edited or revised. And it's not what the story we thought was. That has to do with, as you know, and I'm not going to push this anymore, I got the response from the Finance Committee on how what we thought we were doing, giving more money to SWF. That story doesn't get told right, because the money we thought was going to cover the problem with the raised rates, it doesn't. And just come clean with the situation with that plant, the emergency water supply plant. The rates do not cover it. Now, I would also like to be good where it would also be good where staffing matters reported and described regularly by the general manager. This is the other item that Director Stidell had the grace to respond to me on. The public is rarely given sufficient information to decide whether the claim for more staff needed or significant pay raises for individual staff is merited by performance or needed performance. This tends to be discussed in closed session under the rubric of personnel matters, often, as if there were no way to talk with us about what you need. Please get imagination going. I assume that the general manager now with us will have that imagination and describe how staff performance is going these days and what that means in terms of your budget. And if you need a new person again at the front desk and billing, why? tell us about the detail of that staffing, even though you aren't in charge of staff. The general manager is in charge of staff, but guess what? We public are in charge of everything on that pyramid of oversight that California has for you as a committee. And so I am glad for the response. Director Steidel, you and I will meet at Shamel Park tomorrow at 10 o'clock for coffee and talk a little more about this, because I do not understand the vacuity of numbers. I understand them always within the story. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Rice.
I don't know if Director Steidel wanted to respond to that, but I have a report, and I'm not a committee chair, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a report to make.
Okay, do you want to go first or last? Well, we just heard from finance. Let's do finance first. Director Steidel.
Okay. So I have a little bit of a conversation as far as the committees are concerned, and part of that is that just to set it out, I've been really, really pleased with the work that the Finance Committee has been able to accomplish over a very short period of time. It managed to work through a budget policy, managed to work through a reserve policy, managed to be able to support a very interactive and proactive development of budget information and data, and taking into consideration establishing information that gave visibility to the community to the Proposition 218 rates and how they would be able to be tracked and used, and the concepts of project accounting that would be able to go on as we go forward with things. And with all of that stated, we've hit kind of what I'll call a slow period, in that we didn't have something immediately to take care of. We've done our mission statement, we've done our goals and objectives, the bylaws were straightened out and were made applicable across the board. And I found that what happened is that we started looking for things to do. And it took me a meeting before I recognized that we were looking for things to do. We were going to the board to find things that they wanted us to do, and got caught in exactly that, the falling off the rails kind of thing that can happen very easily. And so, number one, I wanted to state that and say that I recognized that I had found that in my own in my own use of information as far as the committees are concerned. But in having attended other committee meetings also, I think that we're all kind of grappling with that, quite frankly. And I do think that as a board, we have an obligation to the committees to be a little more definitive in what our expectations are in going forward. And in saying that, I think in some ways, in hindsight and in retrospect, I think we got it kind of backwards, maybe even in the way that we approached the whole concept of the mission statement and the goals and objectives and everything. As it turns out, I think the bylaws were the most important part of it, and probably something that needed to happen first. And I think that's probably why we had a lot of stumbling going on, because the bylaws themselves had a statement of purpose, which would have assisted tremendously in the committees themselves and their ad hoc groups being able to come up or have a better consideration of what the structure of the mission statement and the goals and objectives are. In approaching that, for the Finance Committee, I guess I'll make just the observation of the approach that ended up falling out of that process with the bylaws having been accepted on July 18th. There was a validation of the mission statement and the goals and objectives that we had already done to go back against the bylaws information and the statements of purpose to be able to validate that they were representing the same information. But when we approached the mission statement, we did it as kind of defining what our undertaking was, what our duty was. And in the goals and objectives, the goals were treated as broad-based statements of the intended role for the committee. And those could be specific to a time frame, or they could carry over on a year-to-year basis. In some cases, like for instance, something related to budgeting. The objectives, the approach that we took on the objectives is that there are very specific tasks or assignments that are associated with the work that are targets to be accomplished within the given year. My thinking was that the objectives would be the things we're going to try to accomplish during the year, and that we go back on a yearly basis and we take a look at the goals and objectives and we define whether there are new or different or restated goals, and then to define the objectives of the tasks that will fall within that. I approached it in the way that it's done on a general business basis, and that's what I was used to doing. So that was kind of the way the information fell out with the ad hoc group. So the objectives themselves were to be accomplished during the year, and they were used to focus us to remain on task and as a tool for self-assessment for evaluating our success during the year. So the mission statement and goals and objectives have yet to be brought forward to the board to review. And I think that that's an important part too, because those objectives being task-oriented are something that need to be considered by the board to see if we're meeting the expectations or the desires of the board in the actions that we're going to be taking for ourselves. So I guess as just an additional aside to that, all of that is the underpinning to all of that is communication. And I think that I understand where I faltered in this process, and I wanted to verbalize that, and I also wanted to verbalize what I had reassessed in going back and taking a look at things and trying to understand what got us from A to B. To see if there's something that we could look at to find ways to make this a more definable process for ourselves and for the committees, so there's less stumbling and more very specific approach that can be used in the overall process. So that's my position.
Excellent. Director Rice.
Reviewing, evaluating, assessing, reassessing? Who are you? Are you on the board of the CCSD? I'm so glad you are, because those are things that this board has not done in the past historically. So I'm glad that you've done that, and I appreciate your input on it. Looking for things to do, it's part of what, when I was chair of the policy committee, it was what we were trying to tackle too, and there's frustration. To give kind of a broader context briefly, I served on a committee that was an ad hoc committee. It had a very specific task, and it was time. There was a time frame that once it was done and we gave our report to the board, we were done. And that committee, the Water Emergency Alternative Citizens Committee, we had a specific task, and we spent almost a year getting the background to get up to speed, because we were looking at what do we do if there's an emergency, like a sudden emergency, or somebody drops LSD into both creeks. I mean, there's going to be emergencies that are unpredictable besides drought. So we couldn't do the work of the committee without having that underlying background, and it took us almost a year, which is a long time. And I appreciate that, especially with resources and infrastructure, and probably even with policy, there's a certain amount of getting up to speed. Finance is a much more, in my mind, is a much more clearly defined space for committees to work. And if we look at these committees as being advisory to the board, that might be helpful also. If we are looking at them as advisory committees to the board, I know just in my brain, words kind of help me sort out what works and what doesn't work. But in that, not having the strong focus, especially with policy and resources and infrastructure, but also with finance, it starts to frustrate volunteers because they're not sure what they need to be doing. Last week, there's an example of a policy that came forward to the board before it went to the policy committee, and that's fine. We're still working on how do we do these things. But it would be helpful, I know, when I was chairing the policy committee, and I'll leave it to Director Howell going forward, but it would have been helpful to say, hey, we need to do a policy. We still don't have a written, as far as I know, I think David Hirsch is working on a policy for the homeless encampment clearings. And so there's some policies that probably should take priority over putting a handbook together, but those need to come from the board. The other thing I was thinking when you were talking about looking for something to do, it is also the case that the board will have things to give to the committees to look at. The PG&E issue with the energy, that's something that we need to have a committee look at before it comes to the board. That's what the resources, and that's their purview, is the resources and infrastructure. I'm thinking, because I am so happy that we finally do have standing committees, and I definitely need them to be working well so that we have people that want to be on them and they don't see it just as another quagmire of places to stick people so they can talk but not have anything happen, which nobody wants that. But it might be good to pull back slightly in that maybe right now what we do is we make sure that it's the board that says, here's what we need the committee to do in the next 3 months or the next month, so that the agendas are being set at the board level. So we can say, hey, could you look at the electronics during meetings policy? This is something we think is a priority. We're going to do this going forward. And that might help also, because there's always going to be a background of trying to get the context, like learning about the different policies CSDA handbook has, learning about what CCSD policies are, or even just looking at what the system is and what the system needs might be and what do we currently have for a capital improvement program. There's a lot of stuff like that people will consistently learn if they're looking at also doing a specific advisory role for the board. Like, we've got this thing coming up. We need the committee to please take a look at it and give us some input so that we know what's happening. Because if the committees are just deciding on what to work on, then we're just adding to the overall workload instead of having the committees help the board get the job done that we need to get done. And I absolutely want to thank every single person who's volunteered and showed up for any of those committee meetings, because I think it's important that happen. That's also why we have a board member as a chair of each committee, because they're not necessarily a voting member except for a tie, which means that they can be free to be making sure that everybody's staying on track. This is the goal that we're trying to get done this meeting. And I think especially if there are meetings that require staff attendance because of the information that's needed or something, that we're very clear about how long we're going to demand that. Because I'm pretty sure if we had a consultant being paid by the hour coming to those meetings, we'd be much more cognizant about the trade-off of the staff time and money. That it's not a waste of money, but it is a choice that ends up causing sometimes the staff people to have less time to do the other tasks they need to do.
Thank you. Well said. Director Howell, Policy Committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, what she said.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. We had our last meeting on the 29th of August, so that was before our last two meetings, our current board meetings. Excuse me. how to proceed on this one. So at that meeting, there was a subcommittee that examined 3 policies and brought it to the full committee for discussion. The end result of that discussion was that the committee members decided that they wanted those recommendations to be forwarded to the board. You'll find the full recommendations, I think, as an item on the first October meeting's agenda, where there's a full write-up of the. However, for the benefit of all present and just to kind of introduce the idea, I would like to read not the policies themselves, which are quite long, but just the recommendations so that it can be in front of everybody here so that some thinking can be done and also to just move the process forward. So the first of the 3 policies that they dealt with were the duties of the district clerk, an overview rather of the district clerk's role. And there's a note that the subcommittee said, as the board of directors has no established position, excuse me, of secretary, the district clerk performs many of the duties and responsibilities pursuant to this role. These are listed above as extracted from the CSDA policy 1015 and the CCSD position description for administrative services offer district clerk. The recommendation is that this committee recommends that the board consider adopting this policy 1015 with any revisions that might be advised following review by the general manager and the district clerk. So that is the recommendation on that one. There it is. Okay, the next policy, this is policy 1020 regarding board staff communications. The note is that CCSD Board Bylaw 7 only minimally covers the more detailed policy that's in the CSDA manual. The recommendation is, the committee recommends that the board consider adopting CSDA policy 1020. Policy 1020 amplifies, but in no way contradicts the CCSD board bylaws. And then finally, that's a huge long one, that one. The last policy, the third that they dealt with, was policy 1025, having to do with claims against the district. And the note is that CCSD does not have a policy regarding claims against the district, but staff members do follow state statutes with regard to the review and response to claims. The recommendation, the committee recommends that the board consider adopting CSDA policy 1025 with any revisions that might be advised following review by legal counsel. We suggest that having a clearly stated set of procedures for the review and response to claims would be a useful policy to include in the Director's Handbook, even if these strictly parallel the existing state statutes. I think the idea is that the committee is going on as an attempt to assemble all the policies into a coherent, easily accessed whole. And so in some cases, I think they are encountering situations where there may be practices or, as they say, statutes which govern how things go, but there's no single place where a person can go to get direction with that. So that is the thrust of the committee's thinking so far as this goes. The previous board meeting, Director Rice was still chair of the policy committee. At that board meeting, there were 3 policies brought forward, and at that time, the committee was asking the board, given they wished to give an example of the approach that they were taking and needed some feedback to see if they were on the right path. And as Director Rice pointed out, there's a lot of soul searching and breast beating and all kinds of stuff as people are trying to figure out what on earth they're supposed to be doing. And policy was particularly difficult. Infrastructure, after all, that's water and wastewater. Finance is dollars, but policy is this huge amorphous thing. So it's a real problem. And so at that time, the committee recommended that they go through the CSDA sample policy handbook, just go through just in order, taking those situations where our district has no policy, they might wish to fill it, or at least note that there is no policy, or in other cases might wish to address certain policies, but to proceed in that fashion. So in that way, so far we've had 6, the 3 that I gave you today, and the 3 that were presented previously. So the discussion, as I recall, I did listen to all of the meetings and read all the minutes. And as an aside, I'd like to say I was extremely impressed. I've been impressed with all the committees. The talent in this community is absolutely mind-boggling. And the people who have devoted their time to this it really floors me. I was amazed and thankful, as President Pearson says, or as I would rather put it, these committees are sometimes doing the heavy lifting for us. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, if we had to do this all ourselves, it would be a full-time job, even more than it is now. So, so the approach would be that they would proceed, absent any direction from the board, they would simply start chunking through these policies and bring them forth as is. However, it's the understanding that the board could bring forth policies that they would say preempt that, and so the committee could focus otherwise. The problem was, what do they do when the board hasn't given them any direction? So that's where, so apropos of that, currently the committee, there's a subcommittee working on the Code of Ethics, a conflict of interest policy, and correspondence to the board. So those are the next 3 in order in the CSDA manual. And I believe that we're hoping that they will come forward at our October 9th meeting with some kind of a recommendation on that. Apropos of that, I wish to say that the regular meeting, that we had to cancel our regular meeting and move it to a special meeting in October, we are so shorthanded that we would have had great difficulty even having a quorum. So we've had to move it to October 9th. So this is what they're doing currently. What we will be working on, based upon what I've been hearing from the board, and this is also to the members of the committee, who some have expressed a great desire to get their teeth into this stuff and really do it, here is the chance. So 2 policies came to us from our last board meeting. One had to do with the board's use of electronics during board meetings, and the other one, which the board has specifically asked, is the policies and procedure related to the homeless camps. And I have received, however, we haven't reviewed yet, the letter from Mr. Carmel's office, but I plan on doing that. Once I've reviewed that, there may be questions, and then we'll see if it's ready to go to the committee to be gone over further. So those are 2 that have come from the board. And then in addition, from conversations with President Pearson and General Manager Weigold, 2 additional things came to attention, which I think probably should be addressed, although if it's in order, I wouldn't mind some direction from the board, but even if it's not in order, I think we'd still go forward with it. One is some kind of policy or policies related to disaster preparedness, something that's on all of our minds. And the other thing is policies related to the Vets Hall. How are fees to be assessed? Who gets what fees? There may also be other issues as to the use of the Vets Hall. So those are 2 things which it was felt there was some need to do. So those are items which I will be presenting to the Policy Committee at its October 9th meeting. I have to say we're very sorry I've been very sorry that we lost Mike Lyons. His contributions were really excellent, and it is a loss that he was unable to continue with us. But we are, as I'm reminding everyone, we are short one, and it's a huge job we have. So I'm looking forward to that position being filled. I understand this is more for the public. The position is being advertised now, and I believe it will be taken up at which meeting of our next October?
Yeah, we'll have the applications, that we give them 2 weeks to apply, so we will have those available for us at the first October meeting, and we'll have that on the agenda at the first October meeting.
Excellent. So that means that by the time we get to our actual regular meeting in October, which is at the end of the month, we'll actually be up to full complement. So thank you, fellow board members, for helping us to move that one forward. I believe that is the sum total of my policy committee report.
Good, thank you. All right, first, on the three that you brought us, thank you, and thank your committee members for all the hard work, but I haven't seen those. Have they been published as part of the agenda yet? They have?
The ones he read today, or?
Yeah, the ones he read today.
I don't think so.
The first three, yes.
Yeah, they were in, they had just been put together. I just got, it was from Haley, I think it was from Haley yesterday that she had put that together, and that's when I saw that looks like it was on the October agenda.
The new ones?
The new ones, the ones that we just brought forward, that I just read from.
Conflict of interest?
Yeah. No, not those. Those are the new ones. These are the ones regarding district clerk, overview of the district clerk. What did I just say? Board staff communication and claims against the district. That is in the, I did see that, but maybe it hasn't quite gotten through all the levels of where it needs to go before it comes to you guys.
Yeah, I think it's ready. It just needs to be part of a package so that we can have a resolution to go ahead and accept those in the recommendations of the the policy committee. Yeah, Mr. Manager.
Mr. President, one note on the Vets Hall policy. I'd make a recommendation that they coordinate with the Finance Committee, as the fees for the Vet Hall review are already on the agenda for that committee, the Finance Committee, and their new ad hoc committee.
Okay, very good. So, running back a little bit, I think we need to get those three on the agenda for our very next meeting in October and be able to go ahead and approve those as your committee has written. I don't see any problems with it, but I'd like to be able to read the whole thing. I think the rest of us would too. So we'll do that, number one. Number two, discussion on what else they should be doing. I think he's got a good list right now. Thank you for bringing up on the Vets Hall that finance is already working on the fees part of that, but the use and all of that kind of thing probably needs to go through policy.
Well, we're not working on the fees yet. In fact, we had put it to future business because a good part of what we need to do relative to looking at the fees is actually reviewing information that is established from staff, because they have all of the background information about how the fees are originally devised or derived, and then to be able to make the, either it could be, a recommendation that you go with that same process, and oh, by the way, this is what the fee would be if that were the case, or that process for development of the fee isn't appropriate, but a lot of that needs to come initially from Ms. Duffield, because she has all of the financial minutia to be able to provide that kind of insight. And it was our expectation to wait until she got past the 17-18 audit process to bring that forward. So we're not, just to clarify, we're not actually working on the fees right now.
Okay, very good. Yes, Director Rice.
I just want to step back one sec, because I do want to say also, when we're talking about looking for things to do, I think it is also part of the job, kind of as a function of the fact that you're specializing in a certain area of the district, that when you stumble across something that you go, what do you mean we don't have a reserve policy? That those kinds of things need to be brought to the board and say, hey, we need to work on this, but not to just go and work on it, to say, hey, we notice this thing is missing that might be kind of important. And having the policy committee be able to do that, because there are some policies we don't have that are in the CSDA handbook that would be useful, and some which are less useful, but I think that's an important point. The other thing I wanted to quickly say on the Vets Hall policy and the fees, sorry, two other things. Vets Hall policy and the fees update. Vets Hall policy, for a while, I think it happened in 2006, 2007. For a while, you couldn't rent the Vets Hall because we had a white supremacist group come to town that wanted to rent it. So we ended up, because of that and First Amendment issues and things like that, they ended up halting all the rentals of the hall. So be aware that may be, this is why we need policies when there's something super contentious that comes up. We didn't have anything in place at the time, which forced us to stop renting it out. Probably was 5 or 6 years, I think, maybe, before we rented it out again and had some fees coming in. On the fees update, last time, I think it was Bartle and Wells that did the fees update last time. They reviewed all of the fees and charges that we have and suggested an overhaul based on a nexus of how much it costs to provide whatever it is. So it may be the case that the Finance Committee would work with a consultant who does that, but in similar way to 218, you don't want to try and base some fees that somebody might want to contest on something that's less than solid nexus of what it takes to provide that service.
And if that were the case, that should be a consideration, then that is something I'd be expecting to hear back from staff through Ms. Duffield and the general manager, that's a suggested approach to be able to put that zombie down and to move on. So
and it may be the case. I've only been on the board and paying attention to these things for a little while, and only in this town, so that may not be the only way to do it. That's just the way that we did it last time.
Right.
Yeah, the only caveat I would make on that is that the repairs need to be amortized in the fees somehow. Because we need a lot of repairs right now, and we can't do them because we don't have the fees to cover those. Okay.
A question, if I may, for Director Howell. And I know that you've just become involved in the policy committee right now, so maybe this even is a question for Director Rice. But has the policy committee actually gone through and identified where the CSDA booklet has policies, but we do not? Just so that we've got, I think that would be something you could address quickly, because by having a listing like that could come back to the board and say, okay, this is where we have potential mismatches or shortfalls in terms of policies. Are any of these policies, do you feel that these policies all need to be addressed, or should we focus on specific ones or put those, rather than just going on and, 1, 2, 3 through the book? It might give a little bit, it might move the process forward for you.
Yes, thank you. That has been done to some degree in terms of seeing what policies are absent. It's a good, and apropos of that, if I could, again, I received some very good guidance from President Pearson and General Manager Weigold on exactly this issue. It was suggested that the policy committee come up with 3 lists. One would be, what are the top 5 that should be done from the handbook? And what do we have that needs revision? The other thing is, what policies are needed that don't exist? So I think, what we will probably end up doing is just sweeping through and saying, here is the universe as it is, and hopefully to give some, as a way of asking the board, I think, for guidance as to what, it really is the board's decision as to what is most important after all. So I think the sooner we can come to that, I think the more productive we'll be. So we'll try to make a real effort, I think, to get that done. So thank you for the suggestion. It's very good.
If I may clarify, just because I kind of saw the same approach when I was chair. I kind of saw the same approach as being helpful for the board, and the committee is intent on working the process of the handbook, which is important for them to take ownership of also. But as an advisory committee, I think as the chair, I didn't want to direct them on their recommendation. Sitting here as a director, though, I would just want to say what would be nice to have is let's have the draft table of contents of what the CSDA's handbook has in it. And if we could mark those as 1, 2, or 3, have, needs revision, don't have, or whatever, then the board can look at that draft table of contents and say, instead of going numerically, let's make sure we hit this policy
Yeah, something on
first.
page 3 might blow up in our face where
Right.
if we,
Instead of, and there might be policies that might be relevant coming up sooner than other types of policies. And so I would suggest that we do something along that lines if there's a consensus among the board to take that approach. But I do want to make sure that we also recognize the hard work of volunteers who are working on this and are excited to work on policy. Thank goodness.
Good. Have you got enough direction now?
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have this slip in front of me from Miss Richards, and this is gone. So.
I meant 3 on there. Sorry, I put the wrong one on there.
3?
Yeah, it was not 5-3 meant for policy, or actually for the next one. You said you're going to do the public comment first, right? For infrastructure. So. Yeah, whatever that's next. So you said you did public comment first. I just put the wrong number on there. Sorry.
Okay, so you want to talk on 5
I'm just going to talk in general.
IV?
Yeah. For any of the committees, but specifically, it can be applied to this particular committee. Okay? Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Hold on. So we're moving on to, just stay right there, Ms. Richards.
I will stay right there.
We're moving on to Resources and Infrastructure Committee report, and we're going to hear from the public first, because I have a couple of people who want to speak about that one, okay?
Cool. It's so cool to be wanted.
Yeah, you're wanted, all right. Okay. All right, so we'll start with Ms. Richards, followed by Dr. Bettenhausen, followed by Ms. Dickinson.
So President Pearson brought up a comment about the bylaws, and we also had a comment about code of ethics and conflict of interest, what's going to be the policies view in the future here. I'd like to bring up a comment. I think that President Pearson is correct, that there has been some slippage in the responsibility of members of these committees, and I'm going to give you an example of one. Monday, September 7th, 10:41 a.m., it's an email from Tom Gray to the California Coast Commission, and he states, it's on concerning the People Self-Help Housing Appeal. I have been nominated by Supervisor Gibson to be on the RAC, and I am not currently affiliated in any way with the CCSD. Oopsie, that's a real problem here. Your ethics, you have a whole section on your actual bylaws stating .43. Members of the committee are charged with protecting and upholding the public interest and exhibiting the highest level of ethics. This is not a correct statement. This is not a true statement. He goes on to say, however, I was under contract with CCSD for the 2014 to 2016 as a public information officer and have extensive knowledge of the EWS. He goes on to say, a pretty scathing document, the staff report is riddled with errors, crucial misstatements. The staff report gives a garbled designation. The bottom line is, we have an issue here with the government code section 549.50. And I don't know how it would be addressed. How do you address these issues where you have individuals who are stating situations like this, where they are on the committees, but they're claiming that they're not affiliated with the CCSD? How will you handle this in the bylaws? And there's no explanation in this clearly on how this situation, the 3 strikes are out rule. What is the rule on misconduct in this situation? So that's my question to you. Like I said, there is some other clarification. No public official shall participate in making or in any attempt to use his official position to influence a government decision. That's also in the bylaws as well. So it's on the document right here. I just read it off there. I'm just curious what your direction on this would be for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I attended the meeting of the Resources and Infrastructure, a standing committee, on Tuesday. And I often attend, but not regularly, so I was glad I was there on Tuesday. And I want publicly, clearly, to compliment this standing committee on resources and infrastructure for how that meeting transpired on Tuesday. I want to thank Director Vice President Farmer for chairing it. This has no implication for how you chaired it, Director Howell, which was always excellent. But I liked how you chaired the meeting, Director, if you'd pass that word along, Mr. President, to Director Farmer. I liked how he chaired the committee on Tuesday because it allowed for an open discussion by all members of the standing committee, which I've found in my experience has been fairly rare, as well as members of the public. It engaged conversation in a way that was refreshing and distinctive, and I hope we see that consistently in all of the standing committees without violating any bylaws, et cetera, et cetera. I want to thank the ad hoc committee that served on for the Resources Standing Committee, because when they developed the mission statement, objectives, and goals, and based it upon the bylaws of the board, it was an astute way of going about it, because they were consistent with what the board expects in its bylaws of what standing committees are about. And I think they did an excellent job, which opened up a lot of discussion, of course, because we don't all necessarily understand that exactly in the same way. I want to thank General Manager Weigold for being forthright in this meeting on Tuesday with his understanding of authority and authority in the CCSD, and his willingness to look afresh at that, given the bylaws definition of standing committees. There was a little sorting out going on, if you would pass that word along to the general manager, please. A little sorting out going on Tuesday of our expectations of the role of the general manager, the board, the standing committees, and we ordinaries called the public. Often authorized oversight and understanding of responsibility don't immediately get in sync. Authority on the one hand and responsibility on the other, and sorting out expectations of power. Now, there you got it. I've been a board member of many organizations. I've been a staff member. I know what's going on here. And I would commend you, board, for clarifying every time it comes up to your general manager over whom you have oversight exactly what your expectations are. And I thank very much Director Rice and Director Steidel for discussing the need to clarify the role of standing committees, saying specifics about how that needs to be clarified, and calling on the board as a group to do that clarification of the focus and responsibility of standing committees. I thank you very, Mr. President. Would you pass along, please, to Director Rice and Director Steidel my compliments on what they spoke today. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. Ms. Dickinson?
Well, be careful what you say, President Pearson. It's just going to come back, give you more work. So, first of all, I'd like to echo the words of others who are very pleased that we have finally established standing committees in our town. It's about time. And I want to thank the people who are volunteering, because I think from those that I first attended earlier on, and the last year has been riddled with many medical issues in my family, quite serious. So I haven't been able to attend as many as I would have liked to, including Tuesdays. I was in LA. So I listened to the R&I committee meeting from 11:30 last night to 1:30 or more this morning. And I was not happy with it. I was happy with what the committee, their work, what they had put into it. I believe that they used good judgment. I think they were very knowledgeable in approaching their mission statement and their goals and objectives. But I was not pleased with the general manager's response. The general manager has not dealt with this kind of work in his past. He has not been the general manager of a CSD, and I would hope that in the future he would show and acknowledge the work of the standing committees, because believe me, it's hard work. I mean, I am really impressed with what you're doing, because if I don't come, I listen. So I would like to thank the members of, in this case, the R&I, because that's the meeting I just listened to, for their hard work, their dedication, effectiveness in helping staff, board, and the community in addressing many issues that have not been taken up by staff due to a variety of reasons. To have open and transparent meetings to air the issues that are before us is indeed most welcome. I hope to be able to attend some of the meetings in the future. But you know, when I do attend meetings, I don't sit silent. And I do not intend to sit silent when I see and hear, or hear in this case, a committee being addressed in the way that the committee was addressed yesterday. I do not appreciate it, and I will speak up every chance I get, because it wasn't right. And so again, my thanks to all of you, the board, and to the standing committees. Going forward, I think we're going to be in a better place, and to the general manager, I think you will end up being in a better place when you listen to these people who have the knowledge and history of this town way beyond what you have currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Farmer, your report is up now. Thank you.
It's a bit challenging to follow Ms. Bettenhausen and Dr. Bettenhausen and Ms. Dickinson, but I'll endeavor to do my best. And first, I want to kind of echo with other comments that have been made by members of the public as well as the people on the board here. The folks that are serving on the standing committees do so, and they don't get paid for it. And the amount of time and effort they put in, the passion with which they approach their whatever task they're being given. And some of them are soft-spoken, some of them are a little bit more forceful, but they all come from a place of loving this community and wishing to serve it with as much integrity as they possibly can. And I just want to let people know that. And there's folks out here in the audience right now, past and present members of the standing committees, that I just want to give 2 thumbs up to. If I had more, I would. With regard to the meeting that we had this past Tuesday, and not unlike Director Howell, it was his first opportunity to chair the policy committee, even though I've attended and was previously on the infrastructure committee, it was still a new experience to be the chairperson of the committee, and I'd appreciate the compliments that were given by Dr. Bettenhausen. So what I'd like to do is just kind of give a brief summary of what took place at the meeting. First, I want to say, I'm not understating it when I say it was a very lively gathering. We had some very meaningful and informative comments made from all members of the public in attendance, and it was really much appreciated. With regard to the contribution of the members of the committee. First, we had a presentation from Tom Gray, and this was regarding the ad hoc committee on water availability, past as well as potential future trends. The members of that committee being Mr. Gray, as well as co-chair Karen Dean and Brad Fowles. And so they're currently analyzing 12 years of data, including bill use charts by residents and vacation rentals. And you might be interested in knowing that most recently, and like I said, I'm condensing the information that was given. Most recently in 2018, water use in this community by residents was 66%, but by the business and commercial interests, which includes vacation rentals, it was 32%. which might seem to be a little bit alarming. You might have anticipated that perhaps more water usage would have been by the residents, but that is how the situation is at this time. Also, Mr. Gray took time to describe water usage during the various drought periods in the late 70s and the latter part of the 80s, as well as earlier in this decade. And basically, they're going to be coming back at our next meeting on October 22nd with more complete information with regard to what their task is. General Manager Weigold, he gave us some information regarding companies other than PG&E that he's been communicating with, and how they may be able to assist the district in making major capital improvements at the wastewater plant, as well as wastewater infrastructure overall. And he'll also be providing more detail in the future as progress becomes available in this particular area. Regarding the subcommittee of Mr. Jim Webb and Paul Nugent, they presented a very thorough and well-done description regarding the mission statement, goals, and objectives of the R&I committee. Some members of the committee and the public gave very positive feedback, while, as commented earlier, General Manager Weigold had some reservations regarding the overall content, wondered if the board bylaws dovetailed with the document that Mr. Webb and Mr. Nugent came up with. So Mr. Weigold, the general manager, was encouraged to, write out his concerns for that subcommittee so that they can make whatever changes needed to be appropriate, and they're going to be reporting back at our next meeting. One of the things that they came up with, I'm just going to briefly remark on this, is the primary objective of our committee. And this is objectives, perhaps would be a better way to state it. This is regarding, of course, water and wastewater infrastructure. Make sure infrastructure needs of Cambria are met, that they're being executed as planned in a collaborative effort with staff, and that the committee is open and transparent in their interaction with the public, which is something I believe Ms. Dickinson alluded to. One of the things that we did, by the way, we rescheduled our next meeting, which is normally on the 15th, but Vice Chair Karen Dean was not available at that time. So if you wish to attend the next meeting, it's going to be on October 22nd. And since Vice Chair Dean is in the audience, if you have anything to add to what I just said, feel free to do so.
All right. Ms. Dean, yes?
I would like to commend Vice President Harry, am I on there? For the excellent job he did chairing the meeting and the past job Director Howell did. But I felt like the meeting was held very civilly and gave the public plenty of opportunity to communicate freely with our committee, and I think that went very well. A couple of things that bothered me. This R&I committee was formed last year in 2018 and renewed in 2019 with some new members. We have been working very diligently on the extensive CIP lists throughout this whole time, first with our engineer, Bob Greshams, along with Melissa Bland, along with John Elchin, and at times along with Jim Green. We have spent a lot of time sorting out these CIP lists and determining the priorities and seeing what can be done. We have been on pause slightly after spending a lot of time with John Elchin and Jim Green determining what the biggest priorities were, and came up with those 12, along with John Elchin, for the PG&E proposal. We have been on pause a little bit with the wastewater CIP list because we have been waiting to hear what the plan was for the PG&E proposal, and our understanding was that our attorneys and the other people's attorneys were just trying to settle on the language in the contract. And now we're being told the whole thing is on pause while an overall plan is being worked on, and it would have been nice if we had been told that before so we could look further into what we could do now with our CIP list. So anyway, that's just part of my observation here. Anyway, I thought it was a good meeting with lots of good public input, and I thank Director Farmer for the good job that he did running the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would agree. The general manager, I think, has done an excellent job in putting that pause in place while we get some input from some other companies instead of having just one company. Several of you in the public have spoken out against using just PG&E as our resource for this, and so he has engaged with at least 2 other companies that I know of. I think it's a good thing to get another company to really look at this and see if they have a different outlook on it and that kind of thing. I also think that based upon the fact that we're in a pause on that, one of the things that the R&I committee could certainly do is look at where else we might spend some of that money. I asked the general manager the other day if the Vector truck wasn't in the budget for this year, and I was told no. And maybe that John would really love to have that new one. And maybe what we need to do is move that up on the priority list while we're waiting for this pause to take place and get that done so that we can start looking at all the sewer pipes that we have and getting some kind of status as to where we stand on all those. So that might be something. My recommendation is the Vector truck, but the R&I committee ought to be able to look at what is going on and pick things out. I noticed that the water department is moving along with replacing their pipe across the bridge and stuff, and that's great. Yeah, and we need to see that the money that the ratepayers are paying is being used to improve the infrastructure. And so I commend the R&I committee to, while this is on pause for a while, to see maybe we can do some other things with the money that was budgeted for that. So, Director Rice.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying that there's new information that we're going to look at another approach to the energy conservation program PG&E brought to us, and therefore we want the 12 items that were set as priorities because they were part of the plan to reduce the energy use, which I'm 100% for reducing our carbon footprint, 100% doing it yesterday. But you're saying that we're putting that on pause, therefore are those the 12 top priority projects with the new information we have about PG&Es not necessarily being.
Yeah, so while that's on pause, we might be able to find some other things that we could do now to start working on other parts of the infrastructure while we wait for these other companies to give us their reports and their recommendations as to what we do. They may come up with a different 12, they may come up with the same 12, they may come up with 8 instead of 12, whatever.
It seems to me that we need to determine how important is it that we get this energy program thing into place, because if we're going to start changing some of those things like spending money on the Vector truck, that says to me that energy program isn't as high of a priority as making sure that we have some of the other things maybe that are on our wish list taken care of. Is that what we're saying or no?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just there are some things that are not that costly that we might be able to move forward now, okay? And then at some point in the future, okay, we'll expend the money for the preliminary report, okay, which taking 6 months, right? We'll probably only do that portion this year, and we won't actually get started on items until next year. So if the R&I committee re-looks at that, prioritization and where the money is and that kind of thing, maybe we can get some more stuff done.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then I think I agree with you. I think that it's a good idea to reassess what we're looking at as new information comes in. Oh my gosh, new information, reassess? Is this the CCSD? Am I in the wrong meeting? I'm so happy about all of these things happening, and I concur with your direction on that. If we have a consensus, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Director Howell.
Okay, I do have a question. I remember. Sorry. We speak of a pause. Do we have some idea as to how long that pause, do we have some expectation there, which might help in terms of what President Pearson is talking about?
Sure. So most of this effort really started by some of the meetings I've had in my first 30 days here. One of those was with the City of San Luis Public Works. And when I briefed him on what we were doing, he stopped me short and said, "Oh, there are several other companies that do that. You should check them out," stomping his foot on the ground. So I'm pretty sharp. I could take a hint. And so I started to talk to some of these others, and as well as talking to the communities that already have engaged with PG&E or going through this process. Among some of those lessons I've learned so far is PG&E does not guarantee the savings. At least one other company does. PG&E doesn't necessarily help you with grants all the way through the process. Another company does. One district or city had to hire somebody to do that function. I'm not really interested in having to hire more people at an increased cost. So I'm laser focused on what we have to do. And when the other companies I talked to shared their view on things, when you look holistically at whole systems instead of individual components like we've done, we can qualify for more grants. So in answer to your question, it's a long way around, but my guesstimate right now is just probably a 2 to 3 month delay.
Okay. Director Steidel, you have a comment here?
Actually, this is more an outgrowth of the conversation that's going on, and I guess what I'd like to do is put out to the board something that I would like the Finance Committee maybe to be able to spending some time on. And this goes back to the CFCC. The California Financing Coordinating Committee.
Thank you.
And there was information that President Pearson had brought back regarding some seminar or a day's meeting earlier this year. And this committee is an amalgamation of many things that actually provides opportunities for a lot of different kinds of situations, including everything from agriculture to reclamation to rural water agencies to forestry and fire, all kinds of things. But what they also do is, if I remember correctly, they have some grant writing capabilities that are available, and I believe that those were without cost. They also have some grant access points for money for things like this Vets Hall structure. And I think what I'd like to do is get the Finance Committee maybe in this short term focused on really digging down into some of that and see what the possibilities are in being able to take advantage of some of those resources. I believe that the staff, Melissa and John, Melissa
Bland and John Alchin both attended with me.
Attended, and there were some things that came out of that they were looking into in terms of grant items. But I'm putting that out there for the board, I guess, that I would like to get some commitment from all of you as to whether that's something you'd like to have the Finance Committee get involved in.
I have one positive over here. Yeah, I think if you start with John and Melissa and have them talk to your group and go through what we learned there, and you might call me as a witness also, because I had, yeah, I'm cheaper, so. But Melissa took more notes, and Melissa and John spoke directly to this one group that does stuff for free. And they'll give you a lot of insight as to what they're already doing with them. I know they're already in contact with them and doing stuff with them, so that's good. So yes, I think the Finance Committee, meeting with them and getting a leg up on that would be perfect. Thank you. And
Yeah, I think we have a consensus.
yeah, we have a consensus on that, yes.
I just have one quick comment for you.
Yes, Finance Manager.
So you're talking about the budget and what was adopted in the budget as far as capital projects are concerned for both water and wastewater. So if you recall back to our preliminary budget discussions and our final budget discussions, we earmarked an amount of money in both of those budgets because R&I was still working with staff to determine which priority one projects would come forward, and we would have to amend the budget with those during the first, hopefully we can do it with the first quarterly report. If not, we would have to do that with the mid-year budget adjustment. So I pulled up on my phone what we did budget, since the one time I don't bring my budget binder with me. This question is asked. So we have $160,000 that was highlighted in the budget on a line item for the PG&E turnkey project. And then we have $303,000 and change budgeted for undefined priority one projects in wastewater. That could be a debt payment on a Vector truck. That could be a SCADA, replacement. It could be many different things. But that's something that still has to go back to R&I in the very near future to get those items reviewed and identified so that we can take it back to your board in a future item.
Great. And Vice President Farmer, chairman of that committee, is taking copious notes.
He has my number. He can always call me.
And we'll crack the whip on his committee to get that done.
Get it done.
All right. Thank you. We're through with the committee reports. Yes?
I have a liaison.
Well, before we...
Okay.
Dr. Bettenhausen has a comment on the liaison reports.
I'm a sneaky human being, but now my comment has to do with my hearty thanks to the finance manager for what you just pointed out. Because you have already budgeted $160,000 for this PG&E turnkey program. You already have specified priority one projects in wastewater, and you have budgeted $300,000 plus for them. So I was going to ask you, Mr. President, what you meant when you said we should start, where did my notes start? Look at where the money is. Mr. President, your finance manager has just well pointed out to you where the money is, how it arose from intense deliberations in your standing committee for resources and infrastructure, and I mean intense and days and days and days. So they have deliberated beyond reason in order to help all of you as board make these decisions. I am one of the people who questioned PG&E as your choice from the get-go. I said, where are the bids for this? Not just accepting dear, wonderful PG&E. My bias discloses itself. And at this point, I am so concerned that in your continuing decisions, working with standing committees, you do not do anything that is implicitly, while not explicitly, a condemnation of how the standing committees have arrived at their decisions. And this issue is particularly important with PG&E. I would like it if you would, Mr. President, please, pass on to your general manager that he should watch and listen to all those standing committee meetings where all these deliberations went in with the wastewater staff and the committee and the public on how they arrived at their conclusions about PG&E. Because it is more than just finding other bids. It's understanding what the standing committee is advising you from the wastewater plant about what is certainly needed, and certainly in terms of priorities 1, 2, and 3, and all the work the Finance Standing Committee did to work that into this fiscal year 2019-20 budget. And again, please pass my great thanks on to your finance manager, Ms. Duffield. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Again, Ms. Duffield, thank you. And you did it all without your budget book. Amazing. Technology wins again. Yes, Director Rice.
I can appreciate where Dr. Bettenhausen's coming from, but I also think it's important to recognize who's directing what. We need to know from staff what they need in wastewater and water, but when new information comes forward and the board then changes direction, we do it deliberately. We're not just capriciously changing a decision that was made through the public process, which is important. We're also asking for that public process to be undertaken because the board now has information that has changed, and so we want to have, it's not to condemn the prior recommendations of that committee. It's definitely about adding new information which changes priorities, and then the board directs the committee as to it. I don't think it minimizes the decision-making they've already gone through.
No, I don't think so either. And again, to quote Mr. Key, let's do it deliberately instead of fast. So I think I commend the general manager for finding these other companies and taking that step. So, all right, liaison reports. I know that Vice President Farmer has a couple. Does anybody else besides? Okay. Okay, let's start with Director Rice, please.
So I attended the Coastal Commission meeting last week, and when I go to these Coastal Commission meetings, I don't generally stand up and speak anymore. I was doing that when I was first on the board. I just go and make sure that I say hello to the executive director, say hello to Dan Carl, make sure the commissioners that are new get introduced to me so that I kind of see what's happening and what's going on there. That's my only agenda, is to maintain those relationships and encourage positive ideas about what's happening here in Cambria. I did make contact with a Surfrider representative who made a presentation on ocean-friendly restaurants. It's a certification that they do. They go through a process with the restaurant regarding plastics and not adding pollution to the ocean. And I got her card and I passed her contact information along to Mel McCulloch, who's the head of the Chamber of Commerce, to hopefully get some of these restaurants here in this town too, because I think that our restaurants many of them probably already qualify for that program, but it's a good promotional thing for the restaurants. Also, during the meeting, I was only there for one of the 3 days. One of the hearings on the day I was there was for the new Cayucas project, and there were a lot of conditions, but one of the things that project does is it's proposing to convert the outfall pipe down at the southern end of Cayucas, the old Chevron pipe, into an outfall for themselves instead of an oil pipe, which was, I believe, an intake pipe for oil. And one of the conditions that they added right at the end before they approved it was that the only agency allowed to use that outfall is Cayucas. Now, that restriction had not been, it was implicit in the fact that this is a permit for Cayucas Sanitary District, not Morro Bay, not Cambria, not Paso Robles. It was for, and any other agency that wanted to use it would have to go through all of the process of the MPDE, the discharge permit, all of the, but they did change it so then proactively was saying no other agency shall use this. It doesn't mean that it's eliminated entirely as a possibility, because I know it's one of the alternatives that we were looking at for our brine disposal, and it just makes it less of a less likely. It was already an unlikely solution, but it was reduced from unlikely to more unlikely. But other than that, I would like to have a discussion at some point. It would be nice for the board to be able to have a discussion about the way that this project is moving forward, not just like the town hall, because I'm reluctant to answer a question like, so where are you in the process? What's the status? Well, I've been in a lot of the meetings on the CDP with the county, with the district. I've been a little out of it the last few months, but even so, I'm probably one of the more informed people about what the status is, and I don't even really know what I should be answering to that question right now. So I think it might be helpful for the board to have a discussion on that and a discussion on not necessarily what we call it, but a discussion on how it gets used and how we envision it going forward. Because I think one of the things that has always felt a little bit unclear to me is once we have the CDP, then how are we going to be using it? When are we going to be using it? And that's a huge discussion, some of which is discretionary, some of which we can say, yeah, we don't want to use it except in these, some of which is not discretionary, like we're going to have to use it if we're in another 5, 6, 7-year drought. So there's some level of discretion there, but I think we need to be having that discussion prior to getting to Coastal Commission, because once we're in front of Coastal, we need to be able to answer those questions about how we're going to use it going forward. So that's kind of a future agenda request, but also as a result of attending that meeting with the Coastal Commission.
Yeah. I know that our consultant, Mr. Ogren, is planning on addressing us with exactly that kind of information at the October meeting. So we will have him here for that. Okay. All right. Director Howell.
The short version, NCAC, I have 2 meetings to report on. These will just be the highlights very quickly. On the 821 meeting, there's a bicycle event coming through town on the 28th of this month. It's going from Morro Bay to Ragged Point and back. It'll be from 7 to 5 in the 7 to 5, and there are about 1,100 1,110 participants. So we can expect that on Wednesday, September 28th.
Wednesday, September 28th is not, September 28th is not a Wednesday, right?
Well, that's what, maybe I got the date wrong.
September 28th is a Saturday.
Oh, well.
I think.
It is a Saturday.
Maybe it was a Saturday. Okay, I wrote down the 28th, but I could have been, my notes could be wrong.
Okay, the 28th.
Sometime
The 28th makes sense. So everybody, don't plan on going to SLO on the 28th because.
Unless you want to go over there.
All the way around, right.
Or unless you want to ride a bike and go down there.
Good one.
There was a very successful meal served to the homeless at the Vineyard Church on the 17th of August. The thing there that I thought interesting is they said the community donations were absolutely amazing. It was apparently highly successful, and they hope to do another one soon. There are issues going on about, it's been suggested that there be a path around where the old dog park is, that bend in the road where the schoolhouse is going to be. Apparently, that's somewhat of a dangerous spot for pedestrians and bicyclists, so there's movement to try to get some kind of a path there. So far, I think the county agency that deals with roads is unwilling for the next 10 years to do anything about it, but there may be other grant funding or other things. I think, Director Steidel, you can correct me as you were present, but something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Of course, there were questions about the hearing at Coastal Commission regarding the board's position regarding the People's Self-Help Project. And I simply said, well, we've voted for it, and that's all I know right now. Very briefly, the SWIFT project on Moonstone Road, or Moonstone Beach rather, there's a new house supposedly going up that was appealed by one of the coastal commissioners, so it will be going to appeal. There was a whole presentation about the scarecrows, some very interesting points. They do have the Scarecrow Festival. It has a 501c status, so they can receive tax-deductible donations. They have been trying to maximize the appeal of the scarecrows on the one hand, but to minimize the local disruptions. And for that, they're thinking of strategies to get people out of their cars more. So there will be various things to try to get people to park and go around and walk, because that's one of the biggest complaints.
Less accidents.
Yeah, less accidents. But there are some interesting, it's been 10 years, which I didn't realize. They had last year more than 16,000 visitors to do some surveys apparently to get this information. There were more than 400 room nights bought as a result of that. And there were more than 400 scarecrows. So the numbers are interesting anyway. And there are, at this present time, more than 100 volunteers working on the scarecrows. They're coming up this coming weekend, and they will be coming down November 1st. Yeah, right. The Land Use Committee, the most interesting one to me is there is a project afoot at Ragged Point Inn to almost double the size of the number of rooms that they've got and adding some offices. That's gone back to both the Land Use Committee and the Planning Commission feel that more information is needed, so that's been put on hold. This is a concern to the community, and we don't have any good information, but we do know that the area there will be overlay or seal coat being put on. Apparently, the road people are not being terribly forthcoming as to when. I mean, we can get maps as to where it's going to happen, but no one knows for sure when it's going to happen. This is going to be an issue for the community because there will be times when you will not be able to get out of your driveway if you happen to get caught. So keep looking at Kathy Tanner's hoping to get that information to where she can publish it. But that's just a heads up for everybody. Just rushing forward here. Let's see. And just as an item of kind of interest to me is the commission has formed a new subcommittee on climate change. And I thought that's having some interesting I heard some interesting presentations regarding that. Also, just as an item of interest, Director Steidel and Tom Gray switched places so that Tom is now the Area 6 representative and Director Steidel is the alternate. So just and that's 2 meetings I just summarized.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Vice President Farmer, you're up.
Just a comment, you said that more interest is being developed there with regard to climate change. If I could just rephrase that, it's actually climate crisis or climate emergency. And it just, I don't know why this humorous thought rolled around in my mind here. You were talking about around 400 scarecrows and also 400 overnight stays. So I thought maybe the people that are staying overnight could bid on their favorite scarecrow to spend the night with them. I mean, it just seems like so much fun, but I digress. Hey. So, sorry, I just needed to add some levity, but no one on that side's laughing, so I need to move on. So with regard to the the meeting with the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch, which took place last week. They discussed sponsored benches on the ranch, and that some of the people that have sponsored these benches, they want to make additions, add designs and plaques to a bench that is already there. This was discussed. The board decided that they didn't want to move in that direction. They're not inclined to do that. So any further, if anybody else wishes to move in that, have that happen, they're not going to consider it. Also, speaking of bicycle events, the Eroica Bicycle Tour that recently visited our community, I think in the springtime, that was briefly discussed because some folks in the community want the event to take place out on the Rodeo Grounds area where the new dog park is, and they kind of put the kibosh on that. Also, check this out. The board of FFRP voted unanimously to co-sponsor a special program on wild animal feeding with the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We'll see how that goes. And Ted Siegler said, as usual, at FFR finances continue to be in pretty good shape. I do want to say that a very good portion of the meeting was spent in closed session updating and discussing the continued search for the new executive director to replace Jo Ellen Butler, who has been the only executive director that FFRP has ever had. With regard to the Forest Committee meeting, which also took place last week, I think the first item that was considered and maybe of most importance was regarding the fuel reduction project on Highway 1 below Ramsey, over there in the old Air Force housing. And there was concern that except for trees, all of the understory was removed, you could say denuded, which the potential for allowing invasive species to become more abundant could take place. Also, since then, the understory has been removed on the West Ranch by the entrance there on Highway 1, where the creek goes under the highway. And while it looks nice and clean, some people have commented once again on the fact that native vegetation may not return, and once again invasive species such as the broom could take over. And of course, we've seen that happen up in the Lamert area. Also, it appears that some property in Fern Canyon that is likely owned by the CSD has had vegetation removed. So there was concern as to whether this was approved by the district, and especially because some of this took place close to the wetlands area down in Fern Canyon. I also want to briefly read some highlights with regard to a report from the California Chaparral Institute, and this is probably something of importance to us folks here in Cambria. There was a Los Angeles Times article regarding wildfire. And there was a journalist who identified the actual cause for the loss of life and property in California's wildfires. And as we probably know, if we've been paying attention to the news over the past couple of years regarding the wildfires up north, it's basically embers and not vegetation that catch fire and that need to be addressed because of the flammability of homes and communities affected by these embers, rather to control nature by destroying native habitat. So that was, and that home ignition is a problem because of embers. Also, with regard to the Forest Committee meeting, there's a discussion about the Endangered Species Act. I won't go into that and the efforts being made by certain folks in Washington. But I do want to mention with regard to grants that Patagonia Outdoor Clothing Company, they're very environmentally conscious. They give 1% of their sales for various causes, and as a result, they'll donate up to $20,000 if anyone comes up with an environmental problem in their community and they can address the root cause of it. So that's, I thought that was nice to know, because we're always looking for grant funding in one fashion or another. Also, with regard to the Green Space Native Plant Garden, which just opened up, it's going to be open on Saturdays through October from 1 to 3 p.m. and starting in November on Sundays from 1 to 2 p.m. And then finally, I just want to throw in this particular item. As we may all be aware of, the global climate crisis is being addressed by the youth all over the planet tomorrow. There's going to be at least 800 locations in this country and at least 5 in this county where the youth are going to be stepping up and saying, hey, you older folks, you caused this. You need to help us out in dealing with this problem because we're going to have to live with it. And that's tomorrow where the youth are going to be being active. Also want to mention a week from tomorrow, on October 27th, from 5 to 7 p.m., there's going to be a gathering of us older folks downtown San Luis Obispo where we can show our advocacy for this particular and #1 issue facing the planet. And also, I believe it's next Wednesday at the public library from 5:30 to 7. There's also going to be a discussion on the climate emergency. I believe those are my reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Did we lose the pros chairman? I believe we did. He had to go to work. I need to address that. Next time he needs to go first, okay? So our next item will be item 6, and we will do that after a 5-minute break. We will be back at 20 after on the clock in the back of the room. Break. Oh, first, we have public comment on the general manager's report from Dr. Bettenhausen first, followed by Tina Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I realize somewhat belatedly that there might be people who are not familiar with your bylaws that say that we may address only you at one of these meetings and nobody else. So there might have been some levity in my, but I was following your rules, so I just want to make that very clear. And I want to thank the General Manager for getting his report to us in print a bit belatedly. It showed up today, but I'm very glad that I was able to sit here now and read it, because I do want to pose 2 questions about it for clarification. The water meter replacement plan, you know that I've corresponded with you over the years, and I always need more evidence that certain projects are really needed. And I investigated through the water meters that we have and the company that made them, et cetera. So I really always need an update at every meeting on the nature of this investigation and the specificity of the delineating the so-called need. So-called is my bias. I need to be updated to be convinced of the need for this replacement. My second point is I'm very, very interested. As you know, I'm sort of a leftover college person in some ways, and I'm very interested in the Cal Poly Community Plan, and that they're including Cambria, and it will only cost us $10,000 or something. But you know me, every penny needs justification, and so I want to know, what in the world is this Cal Poly Community Plan? It's news to me, and I haven't looked it up yet, which I certainly will when I get home in a day or two, I suppose. But I'd like an update monthly from our general manager in his report to you on the nature of the water meter replacement plan. It's specifically what's being looked at and the speed thereof, and the Cal Poly Community Plan. I'd like to know what it is, how it might benefit, and whether he is asking you to make a judgment as to whether this plan would actually be of benefit to Cambria. And I want to say that one of my least favorite words these days, and I was going to use a bad word, I'm a nasty person when it comes to this. And the general manager already knows from my participation on Tuesday, the word holistic drives me nuts. And so if you have any sentiment in that regard, if you could converse with the general manager and ask him to define with some specificity what the word means when he frequently uses it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dickinson?
Thank you, President Pearson. All I can say in reference to what Elizabeth just said regarding the water meters or the need to change out the water meters, in here are all of my CSD bills that I've ever had, ever. And I can assure you that every time there's a rate increase, there's no problem in the reflection of how much water, every bill I get, believe me. There is a reflection of how much I'm using and how much it's going up. So I don't think there's anything wrong with my water meter. I don't think it needs to be replaced, and I have to wonder why we need to spend money when we need a Vector truck, or we need this, or we need that. Please prioritize, please, because it's getting really sickening to find out what you want to spend money on and what you don't. I'm going to ask a couple of questions regarding the general manager's meeting with yesterday, and when I listened to the tape, it said he met with organizations, and I thought, well, no, you don't meet with organizations, you meet with companies if you're comparing them with PG&E, and I'm glad actually to hear that you're doing that, because I think we need when we hired CDM Smith in a no-bid contract, that was wrong, and we do need to look at other possibilities. However, I have a problem with the way you're going about it, and that is you went to the county Public Works, you said that you've talked to other companies. What I'd like to know is, did you ever take anybody with you from this district, from water or wastewater, a chair of a committee, a board member, anybody that could be with you that has a great deal of maybe knowledge and expertise that might be helpful in that? So that would be my question on that. The other question that I have, and boy, I'm concerned about this. San Simeon has now gotten $350,000 in grants. And it was on Tuesday's Board of Supervisors agenda that they got the Prop 130,000. What I am really concerned about is when we talk about our wastewater treatment plant upgrades, what's going on behind the scenes with San Simeon's now, their plans with the $350,000 they now will have, or may have it now, to work on plans for their new wastewater treatment plant. We know that Mr. Gibson in October at the Coastal Commission talked about the regional plant, right? Including Cambria and including Hearst Castle. When is anybody ever going to come to us and talk about it in the open, like Mr. Gibson? I would suggest that we asked for that. We've still not gotten it. But I want to know, has anybody from San Simeon contacted you guys? Because I went to a meeting in May, it was brought up, and they're pushing forward with some plans. So I think we need to look into that, and I'm wondering if that's part of the holdup or not. As far as the general manager, I just want to say this. I was not pleased that the general manager did not attend the September 7th town hall. And while I understand that an agreement was made in the contract for him to fulfill a teaching commitment at Yale on Mondays, I saw no reason why he could not have attended the meeting presentation on such an important issue regarding the CDP and still be able to make the trip to Connecticut to teach his Monday class. I also wanted to meet why the meeting was held on a Saturday, knowing maybe that Mr. Weigel could not be there. And if in future meetings, I would honestly say, yeah, I know, wind it up, thank you. But I'm just saying, please do it on a day when our general manager can be here in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is day 81 on the job. This is probably my last time citing that number. The only reason I point that out is just reflecting on how much is going on in the last 81 days. Things have gotten increasingly busier for the staff, in my view. Most of the managers are working 5 to 6 days a week, a couple regularly 6 days a week. And so we're definitely getting our money out of them, but my fear is overworking them at the same time, particularly in a couple of different departments. I've got over a dozen major initiatives that I tend to share when I go out to speak to various groups. I've listed a couple of them here, and I know that gets everyone excited, either positively or negatively, when I call out what those projects are. But I think the public should keep in mind that I'm always investigating lots of things. And so just because there's something on the list that I'm looking at doesn't mean I'm spending money on it. I'll come to the board for direction and funding and guidance before any of that happens. But I'm looking at always ways to do things better for the community in its interest. That's my number one charter, I believe. We have a utility manager search ongoing. We've accumulated a number of resumes that the staff and I are reviewing. We had a successful, in my view, team building event with the parade. We had a number of our vehicles out, and speaking of the Vector truck, we had our premier vice president, Farmer, leading the way in a Vector truck, and it made it the whole trip. By the way, on the Vector truck, and I know John's here and give a report, but our situation's pretty bad there. So for every day it's in service, it goes back to the shop at least a day to fix something on it. And we use that a lot. We have on the facility side, we as a result of some recent fire clearing, we found 8 more camps this week. So that brought the total of homeless camps to 60 for the year. Now, Carlos has now removed every single one of those 60 from various means. When I asked him how he did it, he said 6 days a week. And he's only got one assistant right now. We're temporarily, just for a small period, down one man in that outfit. So that's a tremendous effort, and one that I don't think the community recognizes how much we get out of him. He's a phenomenal leader out there among all the groups. And I do want to mention that working with the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch in the parade, they were awarded first place in their category. So they have a nice ribbon to display there with the Friends of Fiscalini Ranch. We recently, President Pearson and I and the town clerk, or the district clerk, had a meeting with the school district over in their spaces at the old school, taking a look at what might be in the art of the possible for utilizing some of their space over there. They've got a lot of space. We're pretty cramped in ours, and so we're looking at something where the public might be able to come to one place to do multiple services, and even looking at with the healthcare district there, potentially. But these are all discussions. I want to let everybody know, no one's moving. We'll have that fully vetted through the board if and when appropriate. Regarding the Cal Poly meeting, that was brand new today. So for Dr. Benhausen, the school reached out to us because they had a project lined up with Oceano to do utilize their graduate students, do a project to help a community or help a town or a city in developing a strategic plan. And of course, that's something that's on my radar to do. And so when it popped up, we took the meeting, and this was sheerly investigatory in nature. So the what is to put together a plan for that would encompass a number of areas, everything from our resources, our way of life here, a very much entirety of Cambria, and we control that. So we basically would work hand in glove with that, but all the labor comes from the Cal Poly graduate students. We looked at the information that they had done for the city of San Joaquin. It was pretty impressive. And then we learned that one town was looking to, up north in California, was looking to hire an outside consulting organization, and they went out to bids for their particular project. The lowest was $500,000, and the Cal Poly group did it for, I think, about $30,000 or $40,000. So the benefit for us is that we get work done at an extremely economical rate, something that we need. Our last plan was done in 2008, so you could argue that an update is needed. It takes very little. We asked, obviously, what the load is on staff, and it was very minimal, other than sharing distribution lists, of helping to get notification of meetings. This group would do a lot of that, would do all of that heavy lifting. So again, this is just something that I had one meeting on. We haven't made a decision, but I am seeking the board's consensus on if this is something that they have interest in, and we'd bring it back for formal consideration at the next board meeting. There is time consideration with this group in that they've started the semester, and so if we don't agree to work with them, they will take another community and do a study just from an exercise standpoint. So to them, to do something that's real in nature is really of interest to them. So again, it's just one meeting. Around the term I use, holistic. So I like to think of systems and entirety of systems. So when I use the word holistic as it relates to the PG&E plan, I refer to looking at the whole of the wastewater plant, the whole of the water system, but really the whole of all our infrastructure, for that matter. And so I think my job is to make some recommendations to the district on how we can do things better and more advantageous for all of us. And included in the holistic term, when I think of saving energy, I think of, okay, let's not just put something other electrical in. What about other forms of energy? What about alternative energy methods? So I like to think big. I like to look at the world of the possible. So I hope that answers that question. Regarding the water meters, so the community may not be aware that we have water meters that are malfunctioning almost on a daily basis. The company that makes the water meters that we use no longer makes that water meter anymore. So we have to so it doesn't fit into our existing system. And so right now, we use a system that allows us to electronically read each of those meters. Every time a meter goes bad right now, we have to replace it with another meter that requires manual reading. That means somebody has to physically go to the meter and read it. We're now up to 200 meters that we have to read every billing period. This is going to continue to become exacerbating in across all the meters as they all go bad over a period of time. They are generally, and don't quote me on this number, John may have the number on hand, but I think these meters are generally warranted for 10 years. All of ours are over 20, and he's giving me a thumbs up. So all our meters are over 20 years old. So it's my obligation to look at how we're going to replace all these. If we wanted to replace all of them right now, it would be $1 million. So, there's not, last time I checked, there's not $1 million in the budget, so I have to figure out a plan on how we do that. And also, how do we go forward in the future to be able to more easily read all these meters? So there are systems out there now that do it either from your vehicle, which we're doing now. We drive by and get the readings. But there are also systems that link into a cellular system. So what we've been doing over the past couple of months is the propagation study. And that means where do we have to put a tower to be able to read all these meters? And I don't want to put up 100 towers. I don't want to put up one tower, but we have to be able to have a way to read it. So we're going through that drill right now to understand how we electronically read all these and minimize manpower for the future. As far as my meetings go, so as I went about my meetings over the first couple of months here to get to know other organizations and the like, I generally don't take anyone with me. But any follow-up meetings, such as the PG&E related SST program, I always have at least one person. And generally, for the SST review for these other companies, I minimally have the finance manager and one or two of the supervisors out of water and wastewater. So I'm definitely not the only one there in the room. And I think that wraps up my report.
Okay, we do need to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, basically, on this community plan by Cal Poly graduate students as to whether we want to continue talking to them or not. They need a decision sometime next week as to whether we're a go or not. The general manager is going to talk to the county people to make sure that there's no conflict or anything going on there. And I just need some kind of he needs some kind of understanding as to whether he should move forward or not. So we'll start with Director Rice.
And on that item, I'd like to know what it is specifically they do for the community plan, since we don't have land use authority here, and we don't take care of our roads. Does that mean they would essentially provide us a smaller that's within the authority for this district? That's the question that I'd like to know, because community plan won't do us any good if it's something that we think that we're going to use to create what the town is going to look like 15 years from now, because we don't have land use authority, so we only have certain responsibilities, and we can't really control what the county does with land use. So it may be outside of, but if they're willing to do a reduced authorities kind of situation.
Yeah, they have a template that they have to use because community plans, supposedly we have one, okay? Okay? And so they want to update what we have, okay? And so there are certain things that have to go in there, and then there's housing and there's circulation and those kinds of things. And then we talked about having some additional things like climate and the wastewater treatment plant regionalization, if that's a viable thing, and those kind of things that they'll kind of add into it and stuff. But yeah, a lot of it is county purview and not ours.
Yeah, I think that it might then be better to put our focus elsewhere, as much as it might be nice to have that kind of information. If they're going to be updating the North Coast Area Plan, which is our community plan, that took 20 years the last time. 2008 is the last time it was actually finally approved, but they started that update in 1988. So it's not realistic. Two, it's outside of what is our purview, because that went through coastal. So there's a lot of, I think we have enough on our plate is kind of what my position is.
Okay. Director Stidel.
Well, it was interesting to get a little bit of background in that from Director Rice, and I appreciate that. That helped formulate some more for me, too. I guess do we have any idea if they were to do this, what the time is for them to do this update?
Well, the whole project's done over 9 months.
9 months, okay. Would the project take into account any kind of evacuation planning?
Yeah, the doctor that's doing this is the one that did the evacuation planning for us.
Okay, so
But the evacuation planning is going to continue even without this.
Exactly,
Okay?
yeah.
So we don't need this to do that.
Right, I didn't know if it was another resource that was coming in with a different, potentially, opinion, but you've answered that. I haven't heard anything yet that necessarily supports or gives us added value for the money right now.
President Pearson?
Yes.
So this really isn't an agenda item, and it's starting to sound like one.
Oh,
If we can
okay.
just get general direction as to whether you want it on next month's agenda, that's really all we're looking
It's
for.
gone past the
Well,
time then, yeah.
Yeah, but
You're not making a decision on whether you're going to actually enter into an agreement for the plan.
Right.
It's just worth talking about some more if we could bring it back. And the only problem is, I think a decision has to be
Can't.
made within a week, so we
Can't.
really can't deal with it at all.
No.
He says we have too much to do already.
It's just not possible then. If we can't legally decide to do it at this point, and we only have a week, then
No, it was my
It's
understanding you
simply
were
not
discussing
possible.
whether to bring it back on an agenda so it could be vetted publicly.
But the problem is then it's past their deadline.
I understand, but there's that darn Brown Act that I have to enforce.
Oh, no, I'm saying, yeah, it sounds, actually, it seemed like a sort of a positive thing when looked at in, say, the context of the fact that we've got an urban water master plan we're going to have to do very soon. Whether this could act as some kind of a save us some money on that. But all that aside, it's moot at this point, I'm afraid,
Okay.
is what I'm hearing.
Good.
So, yeah.
Certainly, you could have a special meeting. If you thought it was important, you could put it on a special meeting agenda and address it in short order.
I don't think we need that. All right, moving on. I'll entertain a motion to extend the meeting
So moved.
Second.
till 6 o'clock. Is
6
that-
o'clock.
6 o'clock? All right, we'll extend till 6 o'clock. Can we have a roll call on that one? Rice and Stidel.
Director Rice? Aye. Director Stidel?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Aye.
Vice President Farmer?
Aye.
President Pearson?
Aye. Pass 5-0. We're on to the finance manager's report. Thank you. Not for her. Thank goodness.
Thank you, President Pearson, members of the board. I just want to provide one quick update in relation to the audit. Mr. Bruner was out on site for the past 2 days, and we made a lot of headway with the audit, and we're actually moving into the next phase of the audit, which is the testing. So it was very good news to hear that when he left yesterday. So hopefully, by the time we have the next board meeting, I should have, I'm hoping, cross my fingers, that we have a draft financial report at that point. But the next couple weeks will determine when he comes back on site, when we have all the documents gathered that he needs to do his testing, and then we'll move into report writing after that. Also on the agenda, item 7C is on the consent agenda, which is an amendment to his agreement. I talked this over with the Finance Committee at their last meeting to let them know that Mr. Bruner would be submitting a revised contract estimate to us, just because of all the extra work he's had to do, just to solidify the balances and the information going forward, and the extra trips that he has had to make out to our office. So just to bring that to your attention as well. So I'm available for questions if you have any.
Okay, Director Rice.
Isn't this the second fiscal year that he's worked for the district?
That's correct, but
Okay.
he had a lot of concerns with the information he was provided during the transition last year.
Okay.
So he's pretty much put me through the ringer, because
Yeah.
we have tested every
Yeah.
balance, and I've had to go back multiple years to confirm what created that balance. And so
I was just
we've
kind of
gone
surprised that he
through that.
didn't pick it up. I guess he did pick it up the first year. It's just that
He
it's
did. Yes,
finally
it's
coming
just that it
back
was-
this year for us to
Right.
adjust
The
the.
questions,
shambles
yeah,
to
the
do this.
questions that
Yeah.
he asked, a lot of them were not answered or provided to him. So we're just trying to get on board. We're trying to confirm everything is right and done properly. And then once we finish the 17-18, I hope that the 18-19 will just be super smooth sailing. We'll get through that as well, so.
Okay, thank you for that,
You're
because I remember we picked him, part of the reason we picked him is because he was the least expensive, and now it's doubled in price, which is more than but those guys would have charged us more too, probably.
If they had done
The
a good
same-
job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
By the way, Ms. Duffield did bring it to the Finance Committee, and the comments that came back to her were, we got away really easy on this one.
All right.
In terms of financial
Right.
payout for the service.
Good. Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
All right, we do have a request for public comment on item 6C. Ms. Dickinson.
Two things. First, I mentioned to John that some of my neighbors have to have a manually read meter when the CSD trucks are coming. And I asked why. And they said, because my battery is the battery is dead. So I said, really? And for a year or more, this one newer neighbor had a lock gate, and the guy had, CSD employee had to get through the gate to manually read the meter, because she said they told her it was because of a dead battery. So I don't know why the battery couldn't be replaced. Now, Badger, I think, put in our meters, and it wasn't 20 years ago when we got the last batch of meters. So if it's a battery issue, the 200 that the general manager referred to, some of them may be battery issues, and I think that maybe staff needs to identify whether it's actually a battery issue or not. The other question I have, and this was talked about maybe a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, was on the EWS, the facility, on preserving the membranes. I haven't heard anything for quite a while on anything related to that. The Preserval that the district's been using, because they didn't take the advice of the experts, because they thought it would be a lot cheaper. The Preserval only lasts 6 months, and that thing's been sitting out there for almost 3 years, not just sitting there, and not. So I'd like to know what has happened or what is happening with updating the membranes, whatever, because we haven't heard a thing. And so I'd like to, maybe Mr. Alchin has an answer to that when he gets here to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alchin, the utility report. Thank you.
Thank you, directors. Thank you for having me today. And I think you covered my utilities report. I can almost just go home now. But there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk to you about. Would you like me to address some of these questions first?
Sure.
So we had the batteries in the meters. So the AWWA standards are 10 years, or whatever the quality of water is determines how long your meters are going to last. A normal operation would pull a meter every maybe 10% of your meters every 10 years or every 5 years, and then test them against the standard. We don't have the personnel to start yanking meters out of the ground. As far as batteries are concerned, it is true that it is the batteries that are going bad, but these are a solid state unit. The batteries originally were put in the ground with a 7 to 10 year lifespan. Some of these batteries, solid state units, not replaceable batteries, are 20 years old. So, and years ago, they stopped manufacturing this, and last year they stopped supporting these meters. So you can't buy these replacement units. So they need to go. So as they continue to go out, we're just going to have to continue to replace them. And the number from 200, I thought it was closer to 350, and it 300, and it just continues to go up every month. It grows. As far as the EWF and the professionals, it was the professionals that supplied us all the chemicals to preserve the EWS. And so it was their recommendations, and yes, it was a little less expensive, and it was, and we've been following their guidelines ever since. So with the water, I truly believe that most of the information that I had that Jim wanted me to cover was covered by the general manager's report. I can't think of anything other than in the field they have found that there's a lot of root intrusion, and you can imagine that in this forestry area, and we experience that too in the collection system. So that's not a surprise, and they're finding this more and more. As far as the wastewater department, we were able to get a few of the CIP items that were on the 1819 budget completed finally, and so one was that painting of the handrails and lift station A1 upgrade for the electronics. We're still doing a little bit there. As we got into that, we found some more work needed to be done before we could complete the job, and hopefully we'll have that done in the next couple of months. That it's going to take contracting and stuff to fix the ground. The Vector truck was touched on, and I'd like to go, to my recollection is the only thing that was in our budget for CIPs was the 160, and everything else would be decided in the future by the R&I committee. So that is correct, and one of the items that we did discuss was the Vector truck and or vehicles and any other items that were on our number one priority list for wastewater and also for water. I don't believe that there was anything listed as mandatory that we would cover. We would make those decisions after the budget was passed. I'm in the process of coming up with 3 bids for a Vector truck, and I hope to have an agenda item next month for you for a Vector truck and financing options. Keep our fingers crossed, and that'll come through as quickly as possible. We're also looking for a camera. The same 3 companies that are giving us Vector truck bids will give us camera bids. We've identified 1 camera that comes from a company that we would really like to purchase, and a truck that comes from a different company that we'd really like to purchase, but we'll see what the bids come in at. We're still working on manholes. We think we finally got a company that can come in and replace some lids. We're really hoping that occurs in the future, and we're working hard to get that lid in front of on Main Street, right there at the intersection. That has been quite difficult for us. Caltrans is not an easy organization to work with, and that is in Caltrans' authority, so their permit is quite difficult to navigate. I can't think of anything else other than I would like to touch just briefly. I don't want to go too far into the PG&E thing, but originally when we started this whole project, this was supposed to be the whole district. It was this building. This building was supposed to be involved, and so was the firehouse, and so was all the water, and so was the entire wastewater facility. So this moving into a larger picture or a larger project, this is a good thing. And so the idea that we stopped the project with 12 items because of the cost didn't really assist the district in general. Even if the expense is going to be completely unaffordable or something out of our ability to finance, it's better to know it in advance and we can prepare for it in the future. So this is a good thing that we're doing. I think that we're working very well with the other companies, and I look forward to what we find out in the next couple of months. Again, it'll be on hold for a little bit. Any questions?
Thank you, John. My one question is, how is your recruitment going for people?
So right now we're recruiting for a water treatment plant operator, and that is, I believe, interviews are scheduled for the 9th of October.
How about your collections people?
The collections, that's being held up by the union. I would let Monique comment on that if you would like to, but I do believe that has been in process, and we're currently waiting for union information or approval.
Okay,
correct?
Good, thank you. Director Stidle.
John, I'd like to sincerely thank you for all the efforts that you put forward for this district. I've heard your commitment to it and the things that you do expressed as probably one of the more valuable assets that we have as a community. And if Jim were here, I would tell him the same thing. But I know that both of you go to extraordinary measures to stay on top of things, and the idea that there are things that happen, of course, are the things that are visible, and there are things that are focused toward. It's the things that don't happen because of what you're doing on a daily basis that go unobserved and unacknowledged. So I wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'll pass that on to Jim.
Anyone else? No? Thank you.
Thank you
very much. All right, moving on. We're now on to the consent agenda. We have Ms. Bettenhausen, once again, would like to speak.
I have so often wished that my conscience took a vacation, but here I am again. I have only 2 comments here quickly. Look at page 27 of your agenda and the expenditures for August. You have before you there a fascinating short story of at least 3 chapters. Perhaps it's not totally short. And I'm not asking for an explanation. I think it's sort of self-evident. But just sometime take the time and look at check number 70008. It wanders through unexplored territory, but I'm not questioning it. I'm just pointing it out that if you have time, that you'd like to read a short story in your budget and your expenditures, there it is. The other comment I want to make is a quick one. I am grateful to hear that the audit is moving more quickly. But I really, strictly as a member of the public, have no idea what one person just referred to as scrambled means in terms of fiscal year 16-17 and fiscal year 17-18. What kind of a mess was it? How do we know how to deal with such messes and avoid them? How do we have better financial planning? And I'm sure the Standing Committee on Finance would be a wonderful, to ask them to help too, of course. But how do we do more careful budget oversight in this district? And now that we've changed many staff, now that we have a new general manager, I'm sure that will be different. But let's be very candid with ourselves and say, it's always better to go overboard on oversight. Overboard it sounds like I was in the Navy, which I wasn't. But it's possible to go too far. It's not possible to go too far in oversight. You cannot do too much of it. Don't kill yourselves doing it, because it's energy intensive, but do not sacrifice the responsibility of your board for oversight of the finance manager, of course, it's a new one, thank goodness, the general manager, of course, a new one, thank goodness. But just because they're new does not mean they have achieved perfection. Neither have I, and neither have you, so let's keep honest about ourselves and really be always a little bit suspicious. Just like I am when I sometimes go overboard with my comments to you, for which I'm sure you're aware of them, so I apologize for them all without being quite clear exactly which ones they are. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Do you want to comment a little bit about what? One of the things, when we get the audit, we'll have a much better idea as to what the extra time took. But as a for instance, our checking accounts were not reconciled.
Correct.
For
so
when
I started on October 1st of 2018, depending on, because we have 4 different checking accounts, some of them had not been reconciled in 3 years. And the 2 that we utilize the most, which is the main checking for all our normal transactions, and the payroll checking, had not been reconciled for approximately 1.5 years. So before I could even start the audit, because we have to confirm, that our financial system matches our banking institution, all of those had to be brought up to date.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an example, okay? One. Number 2, oversight. The Finance Committee, the Standing Finance Committee is doing a fantastic job of that. Those people that are on that committee are all ex-financial people, and they have been checking everything. They're doing a great job, so that's good. Now we have an auditor who is doing a very detailed job, which is also good, okay? But not resolving checking account. I will admit that when I was a bachelor, I never did that, okay? I never resolved I just looked at it and said, oh, I got enough in there and pitched it, right? But we can't do that with the public money, obviously, okay?
We absolutely cannot do that.
All right, so yes, we're marching forward in the right direction, and we're doing a lot better, and we're going to continue to do better on that. So the community should feel very grateful that Ms. Duffield is with us. I'll tell you that. Thank you. All right.
Would you like me to comment on page 27?
Yes.
You mean the
first bank
short novelette or whatever she called it? Yes.
Yes. So the first bank card is our credit card, and we pay that credit card electronically, and we pay it as a lump sum amount from each statement. So at the time when we had the statement in front of us, collected all the receipts, and you see all the lines of detail because it goes to different charge codes. When I went online to pay that, there had been 2 subsequent credit memos that had occurred for some advertising that we shouldn't have been charged for at all. Well, the system because it's a corporate credit card, I'm assuming, would not let me process an overpayment and just be applied to the next bill. So I had to completely reverse all of those transactions. So you will see the first 10 or 15 items charged. Then you see a whole group of that same check number towards the bottom and going on to page 28, where it shows check number 070008 was reversed. And then on the subsequent page, you will see those charges reappearing because we have to put that back into the system to get the new total. Towards the middle of the page, you will see there's a $408 credit, a $501 credit. Those were the items that were offsetting, the advertising that we got subsequent credit for. So it does look like we're not paying attention, I guess, when you're looking at it, but we did notice that it was an error, and the only way in our current system to do that is to reverse the check and reissue it. So that's why you're seeing a whole page for the credit card.
Okay, very good. Vice President Farmer.
First, I want to say that, sure, as we all know, Ms. Duffield has done yeoman's work with regard to this district getting the finances together. Just mentioned the fact that her first anniversary is coming up on October 1st, and most of us try to celebrate anniversaries when they occur. And I'll be curious to how Ms. Duffield feels that she's even survived this first year at the district, and thank you so much, ma'am. Since time is an element, just want to bring us up to date with regard to expenses at the emergency water facility for the past month. A little bit over $83,000, the large majority of that going for debris removal and power washing at the now decommissioned impoundment basin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Director Rice.
I just wanted to say that we are getting better, and the Finance Committee is a large chunk of that. And one of the, I guess you could call it a side effects of getting better, is you find out how bad. I've been pulling my hair out for years trying to get some of these things addressed. I'm glad they're finally being addressed. I'm glad we finally have a standing committee to look at it and help support, and a very capable finance person that is being helped by all of the rest of the staff, because everybody does need to spend money for what they do for the district, for the community. So that's my little, it's a side effect. It is going to look really bad because some of the things that had been wrong, in order to fix them, you got to know what was wrong. So I'm glad we're fixing them.
Okay, very good. All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a move and a second, so can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Farmer?
Aye. Aye.
Director Howell?
Aye.
Director Stidel?
Aye.
President Pearson?
Aye. Passes 5-0. We are now on to number 8. We're in the stretch run, Crosby. Mr. Schwartz would like to speak on number 8A. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, President Pearson and members of the board and staff. I know you've all read the excellent agenda package on this item. I have one other small bit of information to add to it. At the discussion on a similar item at the last meeting, there was a question about how do we know whether one particular parcel is of more importance for conservation than another. It was a good question. The district has in its possession an excellent report that describes exactly how these determinations are made. It's called the Cambria Vacant Parcel Assessment Report. They've had several of them done. This one was dated in 2010. I believe that was the last one that was received. I urge the directors to get access to this report and at least skim it over. It's got some fascinating maps about all the different lots in Cambria, the ones that are built on, the ones that need to be preserved. ones that are of more importance than the others to be preserved. It's just a very interesting document. If you can't find it in the district, I have a digital version of it I can send to you to distribute to the directors and the general manager. So, but very good report to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking around too, Mr. Schwartz. I would like a copy of that. So if somebody could show me where that is on the website, just give me a link or something. And if
Looks like we need to get a copy from Mr. Schwartz.
okay, if we need to, we need to. Please. All right. Next, we'll go ahead and introduce this item. Mr. Carmel is screaming to get going here on this.
President Pearson, members of the board, you'll recall at the last meeting you approved the transfer of 3 lots located on Ramsey Road from the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo to the district pursuant to our Lodge Hill Transfer Development Credit Lot Retirement Program. We've actually received over 400 or approximately 400 lots through that program. There is a landowner that they've identified that's interested in donating an additional 2 lots located on Burton Drive. Carlos has inspected those lots and found no issue with them. I've reviewed the preliminary title report, and there's no problem with title of the property. You have a real property transfer agreement in your packet, I hope. That also includes the conservation easement as Exhibit C that we utilize in these transactions. That agreement deals with both the Ramsey Road and the Burton Drive properties. So there was a couple of other issues that the board asked me to look into. One of them was the approximate cost of maintaining one of these vacant lots for a year. And in talking with Carlos, and I think you guys all know this, there's so many factors involved that there's really no way to pick a real average. The build-out reduction program report of 2017 shows that the average cost for maintaining a parcel for a year is approximately $400, but a parcel can consist of 1 or 5 lots, so that's really not of much help, but that's as much as I could do. You also asked when the last time the Conservancy sold a credit was. Daniel Bowman, who's the deputy director and runs the program, he says they sell them quite often, but the last time they sold one was in January of this year. They sold 192 for $4,800. So with that, we'd recommend that you approve the real property transfer agreement and adopt Resolution 36, 2019 that authorizes the general manager to execute a certificate of acceptance once the deed is ready to be recorded. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Discussion? Anyone? Director Style.
I have to admit that I didn't directly look at these lots, but I drive by this area multiple times during the day on my way over to Ardith. And it seems to me that these are pretty dense lots in terms of foliage and undergrowth and trees and dead trees. And I don't know that there's an issue with the lot per se, but I would guess that there's some real cost associated with this in that regard. So is there any possibility that we could request some kind of support in getting the lots cleared, or at least have some kind of, dead wood or dead tree removals or things happen before we consider actually taking ownership of the lots?
We could certainly try. Normally, when Carlos inspects these lots, he'll identify those issues. So I'm a little unclear. I mean, I think he would have. As a matter of fact, he's pretty vigilant about saying if there are dead trees on there. But I don't know. I do know that Carlos said that they're clear that these lots were not a part of the weed abatement program this year, but that they'd be expensive to clear next year. He did indicate also that there's a lot of underbrush. So I think that's accurate.
Maybe that's what I'm visualizing then. Of course, that stretch right in there is pretty overgrown.
So that's certainly a possibility if that's what the board would like me to do.
Okay, Director Rice.
I just wanted to comment on the timing of this because we just had this on another agenda, and I understand different properties have different values to the district, and that we are in an agreement with the Conservancy, but maybe we could coordinate it so it's like quarterly or something so they can be grouped together. It would be helpful. I also think that it would be possibly advantageous, especially when the parcels are more than one or two lots, to look at the whole Cambria Forest Management Plan is designed so that you can do it in small units. It was written that way on purpose. You don't manage the whole forest as one fell swoop, but it would probably have helped if we had a management plan for the section that now looks like a park in a giant city instead of a forest. If we had had the management plan in place, because it's a way to say this is how a healthy forest should be managed, and especially on lots that have lots more trees and have higher value for the native forest. We still don't have a funding source for maintaining these, but we could at least have some guidelines by looking at the forest management plan and how do we make sure the lots that we're specifically responsible for taking care of are treated in a way that helps the overall forest be a better resource.
Okay. I like the idea of having quarterly, grouping all of these on, and having them come forward, or maybe even only once a year or something like that.
I'll talk to Daniel about that.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
Yes, just
President Farmer?
I'm sorry. Just very briefly, considering the fact that overall, over the years, discussions have been taking place about having a forest manager for this community. And somehow, we've tried to dovetail the forest committee and green space and FFRP to try to consolidate their energies together in doing that. And maybe the CCSD needs to plug in with that as well, since we're owning more and more lots here, and see if we can coordinate our limited finances that we all have, except maybe for FFRP, and hire a forest manager to oversee the needs of the forest, which is one of the great assets of this town. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I move approval of Resolution 36-2019, authorizing acceptance of the lots from the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo County.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a movement and a second. Any other discussion before we go? I haven't had a chance to look at this other than driving by either. The other admonishment of the staff is we need to get these reports out soon enough so that we can read them and react. I haven't had much time in the last 2 days to do either one of those things, so we really do need to get the reports out on time.
Or delay putting it on the agenda.
Right, one of the two. But like the general manager's report should be out with the regular agenda and stuff. Okay. Can we have any other discussion? Yes, Ms. Steidel?
I'm wondering if is there any value in spending the effort or time to have, when Carlos is looking at a lot, to be able to take a look at the forest management plan to see if there's any other considerations, or I don't know whether that happens on a lot by lot basis against the plan, or whether it's a familiarity with the plan to have in mind when looking at a lot. But I think maybe a combination of that and the report that Mr. Schwartz was making reference to could be some valuable tools for us in helping and making those judgments as we go forward on these lots.
Yeah.
My understanding of the forest management plan is that the units are created kind of on an as-you-go because it's private property, so it's not, when it's the private property, because you can't just force an owner to manage the forest that's on their property. But, so we would put them together in units as we go. Correct me Swartz is correct me if I'm misstating what the forest management plan contemplates, but it's precisely for that reason, with the understanding that it's not going to come all in one big piece anyway, that we can put it together in smaller units to make sure that this unit, just like we have microclimates all over the town, this unit needs this kind of management is kind of part of the whole idea of it. And I think it would be good to have that in addition to the lot report available to the community and the board.
If I remember correctly from a vague remembrance of the report that Mr. Schwartz referred to during the BRP, is that there's a rank ordering in value within that report, and that might be something that could be easily pulled as reference.
All right. Can we go ahead and have a roll call vote, please?
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Aye.
Director Stidel?
Aye.
President Pearson?
No.
We'll need a separate motion for the agreement, the real property transfer agreement.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. Momentarily.
It would be a motion to approve the real property transfer agreement and authorize the general manager to sign it.
So moved.
Needs a second?
Second.
Not a problem.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Director Stidel?
Aye.
Director Howell?
Aye.
Vice President Farmer?
Aye.
President Pearson?
No. All right, we'll move on to number 8B, discussion and consideration of a letter from Department of Transportation offering a 4,000 square foot parcel. Are you up again, Mr. Carmel?
I'm very excited about this one as well.
Yeah.
On August 16th, the Department of Transportation wrote us a letter indicating they were going to dispose of a 4,400 square foot lot located on Pine Ridge near Burton Drive. They are offering it to the district and the county prior to offering it to the general public. Its value would be established by an appraisal. So with that, we're looking for direction as to whether you'd want to pursue acquisition of that lot.
Okay, this one I did have a chance to go see. And it's a skinny little piece of property that nobody's going to do anything with. And so my opinion, initially at least, unless you want to convince me otherwise, is that we pass on this and either let the county do it, or if somebody else wants to buy it, they can have at it. But Director Rice, we'll start with you.
I think that the state of California had put a policy in place that properties that are owned by the state that are buildable should be used for purposes of affordable housing. That lot, I do not think is buildable. It's very steep, right? So even if somebody else, it's way too narrow?
Way too narrow.
Okay.
You can't fit a house on there. A tiny house, maybe, yeah.
Well, even tiny houses, I mean, that's one of the things the state made a priority. They said state-owned properties, but that doesn't necessarily mean this is the right state-owned property for that. I also think we don't need an additional property to take care of, especially if we have to purchase it.
Director Stidel.
I also had the opportunity to go take a look at this lot, and there were two things that concerned me, and even if what you had just verbalized was possible, there's a Verizon site. There's a whole, there are all kinds of, I hadn't considered that.
Okay, there's a Caltrans property, and it's right up against their right-of-way, and they're just slicing off a piece of what they had before as a right-of-way, obviously. The right-of-way to Route 1, okay, is right there. So,
But this is sitting within this,
so there's
because it's close to
Verizon-
the road.
Yeah,
It's right at Lenora.
so I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's true or not.
Yeah, so, there's a Verizon Verizon, I don't know that it's a cell tower because it doesn't have any real height to it. It only stands about 3 feet, and it's a large metal.
Yeah, I think it's a repeater, but it might.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. That, and at the back of this narrow strip and all along there is a wire fence. And so there'd be cost either with getting rid of it or having to maintain that fence. I have to assume that there was some reason for that fence being there, so that's potentially another issue.
Mr. McKinnon would like to speak on this item. He may be able to provide some education here.
Jerry McKinnon, thank you for the coffee. I'm sorry I didn't hear your comments while I was making out the form, and perhaps I'm going to repeat something that's already been said. This is at the corner of Pine Ridge and Burton Drive. On one corner is a house.
No, it's not on the corner.
On the other corner is a house.
Jerry, it's not on the corner.
It's just down from the house you're speaking of.
Which direction?
Heading
I'm
south.
going up Burton Drive, I get to Pine Ridge, and I turn right. That's the area that I wanted to talk about. That's the one I wanted to talk about. If I recall, there's a concrete slab in there that appears as though there was some kind of construction at time before that had been removed many, many years ago. I've lived there up in that area for 30 years, and I've never seen a structure there. I've seen bicycles parked there, but so we're talking about the thing that I have in mind. That's my concern. Thank you. Was that construction that was there at one time, or that concrete slab?
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Was that
I don't
there
know
by
if it's something with could even have something to do with Verizon, with if that is a repeater there, if there's something. I'm not familiar enough to know what the engineering of those things are.
So unfortunately, we can't put this off because the state has given us a deadline of like 3 days from now. Mr. Carmel, what's the deadline on this? We can't extend this, right?
No, it's September 26th.
Yeah. So we either, I don't even know if we can get anything done in the 3 days that we've got, so.
I have a question. If we were to say pursue this today, the next step would essentially be what? If we were to choose to pursue this, if we were to say yes, go, but because it says TBD on the fair market value appraisal, so this isn't entering into a promise to buy it.
No, it's just indicating an interest in buying it.
Okay.
Then we do the next step, which is probably an appraisal.
Okay. So in a way, we do have some time because we're not making a promise to buy. We're just indicating interest in finding out how much it is.
Who pays for the appraisal?
Who pays for the appraisal?
That'll end up being a fight. Well, I can ask.
Okay.
I mean, my presumption is we don't want to pay for an appraisal.
Right.
Yeah, right.
If they're willing to pay for the appraisal, then we'd pursue it.
Yes.
Is that right?
Well, then we would look into the appraisal and we'd say, we'll pay $3, or no, we won't pay $4,000.
What if it's split the costs of the appraisal?
How much
is an appraisal these days in California?
For a vacant parcel like this, it's hard to say. It could run from $500 to $3,000. It's zoned residential single family.
You might be able to put like 1/4 of a family on there. I mean, it's really tiny.
Yeah, it really is. Okay.
Well, but it's 4,000 square feet, which isn't big enough for
And a
big
real
enough lot.
long.
Hey, have you ever been to New Orleans, seen a shotgun shack?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Oh, Director Howell, I'm sorry.
I'm a little intrigued about the possibility of renting the property to a cell phone provider. If we can ask, if we could express an interest,
part of it.
provided that we don't have to pay for the appraisal fee, I see no harm in doing that.
It would give us time to at least
Gives
find
us time
out, too,
to-
whether or not there is anything
Okay.
associated with that.
All right, let's do that then. Let's give you direction to go ahead and say that we have interest, but we have no interest in paying for the appraisal fee.
We'll take it for free.
Well, I don't even know if we
No,
want to
not
do that.
No, only if we
And in the
get-
meantime, yeah, if anybody can, go out there again. And I drove by and parked next to it, but I did not get out and wander around, so
That's
maybe I
something
ought to
I
do
did.
that. Keeping an eye out for poison oak, which is rampant in these areas. All right, so we're done with that one. Future agenda items. Is there anyone that wants to add something to the future agenda? Remember, you can always call me or the vice president and make sure that we've got it on our list. So, but is there anything, Director Rice?
I'd like to suggest perhaps we review the banner policy, which means we need something on the agenda to recommend it to the policy committee, because I don't know if you've noticed the light post banners that are on the light posts around town are very, very old and faded. And we may need to look at replacing them, so that means and I don't know what kind of fees we're charging right now. I know they're not allowed to change them out themselves. There's kind of a partial policy in place, but I'd like to see that moving forward. It's obviously not urgent, but I think it's an important one, especially because Scarecrow Festival, they're all faded out and doesn't make our town look makes our town look older than it is.
I know, and the Jack and Jill one is getting a little old about them falling down the hill, so maybe we can do something different there too. Okay. I've got that on my list. Everybody's in concurrence that that's okay. All right. Anything else? No? All right. We are adjourned. All right. I will now open the meeting, closed session meeting, and if there's anyone who has public comment on the closed session, now is your chance. Going once, twice.
I just have a quick question regarding this lawsuit against CDN.
Please.
District Council had mentioned that he had received hundreds of thousands of pages of documents. I was wondering if we could have a report on how that is going to resolve those and what the costs have been to the districts thus far. Thank you.
Sure. I think we can tell them that, can't we?
I'd only be able to guess about the cost. I think it's coming near $100,000 in both expert witness fees and legal fees. And the documents have produced some valuable information.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll now go into the other room and chat.
That's agenda item 10.
Agenda item 10.